As the apocalypse looms, he inadvertently consumes a crystal core, transforming into an evolved being, leading a life now beyond his control. The consumption of crystal cores is his unique means of evolution, while the knife in his hand serves as his instrument of protection. Chapter 1. The unknown virus. In a bustling market within the development zone of Linhai City, the early morning crowd is overwhelming, particularly at the shops selling grains and oils, where patrons jostle for space. "Boss, how much for this dragon beard noodle?" Xiao Kai, wedged among the throngs, raises a 500-gram bag of dragon beard noodles high and calls out to the shopkeeper at the counter. 50. The rotund shopkeeper, a cigarette dangling from his lips, stands atop a large wooden crate and, casting a glance at the noodle bag in Xiao Kai's hand, replies, "How much?" 50. "Surely you're mistaken, boss. Isn't it usually around 10? Upon hearing the quoted price, Xiao Kai, incredulous, stares at the noodles as if questioning whether he truly holds dragon beard noodles or something else entirely. "Indeed, it's 50. Take it or leave it. Others are waiting." The shopkeeper, eyeing the crowd with evident impatience, retorts, "Young man, if you think it's too pricey, let me have it. I'll take it." An elderly woman beside Xiao Kai, clutching a 10-kilogram bag of rice, eyes the noodles greedily, nearly reaching for them. "I'll take it." Xiao Kai glances back at the now empty shelves, grits his teeth, and after a moment of contemplation, pulls out his phone to complete the payment, retreating from the crowd. As he scans the bank notification on his phone, revealing a dwindling balance, Xiao Kai sighs and places the dragon beard noodles into the shopping bag he holds in his other hand. He never anticipated the rapid inflation over the past 2 days. Having merely purchased a pound of meat, 2 pounds of eggs, and several pounds of assorted vegetables, along with some ham, he finds himself spending nearly 1,000 yuan today for what usually costs just over 100. The soaring prices are beyond his comprehension. The shopkeeper's earlier assertion rings true. If he were to relinquish the 50 yuan dragon beard noodles, they would be snatched from his grasp almost instantly. It has become increasingly difficult to procure rice and noodles. He had traversed multiple shops before managing to secure even a single bag. Initially, he had intended to stock up on medicines as well, but that now seems unnecessary. Not only does he lack the funds, but even if he had money, obtaining them would be futile. As he passed several pharmacies, he observed that they were so congested with people that entry was nearly impossible, while others continued to rush in from outside. The recent surge in prices and the frantic competition for goods stem from an unprecedented virus outbreak, following a once-in-50 years torrential rain just days ago. After thorough investigation, nations have discovered that this virus possesses remarkable contagiousness and is exceedingly difficult to eradicate. Once an individual is infected, the virus relentlessly assimilates the cells within their body. Infected individuals repeatedly experience severe fevers, and in more serious cases, symptoms such as vomiting and diarrhea manifest. This virus has been designated the X virus, signifying a completely novel and unknown pathogen. Observations reveal that after contracting the X virus, it takes merely about half a month for the virus to assimilate all human cells. In fact, a mere 30% cellular assimilation poses a significant threat to life. Once an infected individual succumbs, the rate of assimilation escalates exponentially, requiring only 3 to 4 days for complete cellular assimilation throughout the body. In an effort to curtail the virus's spread, nations have been compelled to implement quarantine policies, mandating the cessation of operations in all factories and enterprises, while schools either undergo strict management or suspend classes altogether. Once the quarantine is initiated, every individual must remain indoors. This explains the frenzy to hoard various essential supplies. During this isolation, no one can ascertain when restrictions will be lifted, and without ample provisions, one might face starvation with no assistance available. On his way home, Xiao Kai observed that every passerby was donned in thick masks, clutching bags filled with goods as they hurried home. Outside, it had become increasingly difficult to secure transportation. Even public buses had begun to gradually cease operations. Those without private vehicles were left to carry their belongings on foot. In fact, news had emerged yesterday that the coastal city was to be locked down, and although Xiao Kai intended to procure supplies the previous day, his factory had been working overtime, only informing employees of the impending home quarantine after their shift ended. Most factories operate in this manner, refusing to close until the very last moment, which resulted in many being unable to gather sufficient supplies, forcing them to spend exorbitantly to acquire what remained. Due to the lack of transportation, Xiao Kai trudged for over an hour, burdened with heavy packages, before finally arriving at his rented accommodation. The first order of business upon returning was to meticulously clean and disinfect the items he had purchased, subsequently removing his mask and disposable gloves, and discarding his clothing into the washing machine with disinfectant. He then placed the sanitized food into the refrigerator before indulging in a refreshing shower. Only after completing these tasks did Xiao Kai retire to bed to rest. With some leisure time, Xiao Kai picked up his phone to browse information regarding the virus online. But the more he read, the more his anxiety escalated. The information revealed that the virus was far more terrifying than he had previously imagined. Within just a few days, the number of infections began to multiply exponentially, and the modes of transmission became increasingly bizarre. Initially, it was believed that only those in direct contact with infected individuals could contract the virus. However, it was later discovered that some had contracted the X virus without ever leaving their homes since its emergence. As the number of infected individuals surged, the mortality rate also began to rise dramatically. From a mere few hundred reported deaths the previous evening, the count had now escalated to tens of thousands. There are already individuals online who are fervently proclaiming the advent of the apocalypse. After all, such a widespread outbreak of a virus, with its remarkable infectiousness and mortality rate, has never been witnessed in the annals of human history. As darkness descended, the number of pedestrians and vehicles on the streets dwindled. By 8 o'clock in the evening, all traffic lights at intersections glowed ominously red, rendering the roads devoid of human presence and vehicles, as everyone retreated into the sanctuary of their homes. The quarantine had commenced. In the dead of night, the wailing sirens of ambulances suddenly pierced the stillness of the night sky, as if heralding a grim signal. Throughout the night, the relentless sound of sirens persisted, amplifying Xiao Kai's growing unease. It was only as dawn approached, burdened by an unsettling apprehension, that he succumbed to a fitful slumber amid the distant and near echoes of the sirens. The following midday, Xiao Kai awakened in a daze, only to be beset by an overwhelming sense of malaise, his joints aching, and his head feeling heavy while his legs felt light. A surge of anxiety gripped him, prompting him to hastily retrieve a thermometer. The glaring red reading of 38 sent a chill through his heart. Despite meticulously adhering to the recommendations of experts before venturing out yesterday, he now found himself with a fever, indicating a likely infection of the X virus. Reflecting on the incessant sirens from the previous night, one could only imagine the multitude of individuals who had succumbed to the virus within a mere night. The hospitals of Linhai City were already overwhelmed. Chapter 2. Fever. With his head clouded and heavy, Xiao Kai searched his entire room for a single antipyretic tablet. But to no avail. He contemplated venturing out to a pharmacy for medication, yet the increasing weight of his limbs rendered walking a formidable challenge. Although he had experienced fevers before, this one was markedly more severe, and feeling utterly spent, he could do nothing but return to bed, cocooning his shivering body in blankets. With no antipyretics at his disposal, Xiao Kai was left to endure the rising fever, which soon plunged him into unconsciousness. During his delirious state, the number of X virus infections surged dramatically, a spike that took everyone by surprise. Within just half a day, the global infection rate soared to 80% of the total population. Many individuals, caught unawares, experienced febrile convulsions, inundating hospitals and clinics with patients seeking treatment for the X virus. In his fever-induced stupor, Xiao Kai dreamt he had plunged into an icy abyss, chilled to the bone, only to then find himself engulfed in flames, his body ablaze with heat. This torment persisted throughout the day, and it was not until midnight that he roused from his stupor. Perhaps the fever had diminished somewhat, for upon awakening, Xiao Kai felt markedly improved. Having gone an entire day without sustenance, he seized the opportunity while his mind remained relatively clear to prepare a bowl of noodles. However, after only a few bites, he sensed his temperature beginning to rise once again, signaling the onset of another fever. In order to alleviate the discomfort of an impending fever, Xiao Kai retrieved several ice cubes from the refrigerator, encasing them in a plastic bag and wrapping it in a towel. This preparation was intended for when he would lie in bed, allowing him to cool his forehead. Beside his bed, he also placed a bucket of warm water infused with alcohol and set several bottles of mineral water on the bedside table. After completing these arrangements, Xiao Kai forced himself to consume a bowl of noodles, fully aware that the body requires energy, particularly during illness, and food serves as the primary source of that energy. When he reclined back onto the bed, despite the fever's ferocity, he felt somewhat better prepared this time. He could apply the ice to his forehead and use the alcohol-infused warm water to sponge his body. Though the discomfort persisted, at least he did not succumb to delirium as he had previously. The fever arrived swiftly but also receded just as quickly, after enduring over an hour of intense heat. Xiao Kai's temperature began to gradually decline. Once he felt a semblance of relief, he hastened to replace the ice cubes and the warm water. Having grown up in an orphanage, Xiao Kai had learned to take care of himself from a young age, having entered society immediately after high school. Throughout the night, he endured the torment of recurring fevers, at times experiencing a return to normal temperature only for it to spike again. This relentless cycle was excruciating. It was not until dawn that he felt significantly better, his temperature stabilizing at last. After a night of suffering, he resolved that he must seek medication that day. The absence of antipyretics was truly unbearable, and he had no desire to relive the torment of the previous night. After preparing another bowl of noodles, Xiao Kai donned a mask and gloves, then slipped on a coat before stepping outside. Upon exiting, he was surprised to find that many individuals, who should have been isolating at home to avoid viral infection, were now out and about, their pale and haggard faces visible everywhere. The entire coastal city was under strict control, with all public transport suspended and traffic lights perpetually red. Even those with vehicles were compelled to walk. A few individuals ventured out on bicycles or electric scooters, though their disheveled appearances suggested they were in poor condition, wobbling dangerously as they navigated the streets. Most of these people seemed to share a common purpose, and Xiao Kai surmised that they, like him, had endured a night of fever and had decided to seek medication. Evidently lacking antipyretics at home. Curiously observing the scene, Xiao Kai noticed several individuals with scratches on their hands or necks, one girl among them being a tenant from the same apartment complex. He recalled seeing her purchase cat food, indicating she must have a feline companion. The scratches on her hands and neck were evident. Seeing so many people on the street, he quickened his pace, eager to reach the nearby pharmacy as soon as possible. Upon arriving at the nearest pharmacy, he was immediately struck by the sight of a throng of people gathered outside. As he approached, he discovered a sign hanging on the door announcing a temporary closure. Many individuals, upon seeing this notice, hastily turned around and made their way to a more distant pharmacy. Those too fatigued to continue could only stand at the entrance, pulling out their phones to call the pharmacy owner in hopes of acquiring some medication. After lingering momentarily at the pharmacy's entrance, he redirected his steps toward the largest chain pharmacy in Linhai City. He surmised that most ordinary pharmacies were likely devoid of stock, and his only chance of finding medicine lay with the larger establishments. After more than half an hour, he finally spotted the sign of Zhongbang Pharmacy, renowned not only in Linhai City but also across the nation, operating 24 hours a day. However, before even stepping inside, the sight of the densely packed crowd filled him with trepidation. Indeed, as he reached the threshold and peered through the gaps in the assembly, he beheld the once well-stocked shelves now starkly empty. Through snippets of conversation, he learned that since the previous day, not only fever reducers, but any medication with antipyretic properties had been completely sold out. During the midnight hours, a continuous stream of individuals had flocked to the pharmacy, seizing even health supplements, targeting anything that bore a label suggesting a connection to fever relief. Gazing at the barren shelves, he felt no desire to enter. Although he could see staff members making calls to replenish stock, he understood that with shortages rampant across all major pharmacies, there was a strong likelihood that no products were available for restocking. Over an hour had elapsed since he had set out, and every pharmacy he encountered was swarmed with people, either closed or lacking inventory. Exhausted and sensing the onset of fever symptoms himself, he realized he must return home swiftly. Otherwise, he feared he might faint on the street if his condition worsened. Just as he prepared to turn back, his phone unexpectedly buzzed in his pocket. With few friends and rarely receiving calls, often just telemarketing nuisances, he frowned as he pulled out the phone, wondering what kind of solicitation might interrupt him at such a critical moment. Chapter 3. The call from Snail. When he saw Snail displayed on the screen, a faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. Snail referred to a girl named Wang Kursin, who, like him, had grown up in an orphanage, 2 years his junior. She had just graduated from university and was currently interning at a hospital in Linhai City's development district. Since his earliest memories, he had been in the orphanage, oblivious to the identities of his parents, and upon entering school, he had endured much ridicule and bullying from other children. To shield himself from ridicule and bullying, Xiao Kai exhibited a fiercer and more combative disposition than his peers from a young age. Anyone who dared to mock him would find themselves on the receiving end of his fists. Wang Kursin was sent to an orphanage around the age of 4. Reportedly because her parents perished in a car accident. Her relatives, unwilling to care for her simply because she was a girl, ultimately left her with no choice but to enter the orphanage. Upon her arrival, Wang Kursin often cried, her face streaked with tears and snot. The other children, disliking her weepy nature, shunned her company. On one occasion, perhaps due to her prolonged weeping, several older children took advantage of a moment when the caregiver was absent to threaten and intimidate her, even feigning to strike her in an attempt to silence her. Xiao Kai, unable to bear the sight, stepped in to intervene. Even then, he was already a boy of action rather than words. Although he ended up bruised and battered, he managed to subdue the older children who had picked on him. From that day forth, Wang Kursin became Xiao Kai's shadow, earning the nickname Snotworm, as she was prone to frequent colds and runny noses. Upon connecting the call, Xiao Kai forced a smile and said, "Snotworm, what is it?" After a brief silence, a melodious yet urgent voice on the other end inquired, "Xiao Kai, are you running a fever?" "No, how could a strong person like me have a fever?" he quickly denied, momentarily taken aback by her concern. It's impossible. Your voice is off. You must have a fever. You don't have any antipyretics at home, do you? Come to the hospital right away. I have some here for you to take. Wang Kerson's tone was laced with urgency. It's really not necessary. I'm fine. Xiao Kai murmured softly after a pause. Fine. Do you have any idea how serious this X virus is? People can die from it. I don't care. You either come here immediately, or I'll come to you. Choose, she exclaimed, her voice rising with impatience. Hearing her escalating tone, Xiao Kai let out a resigned sigh. All right, I'll head over now, he acquiesced. That's more like it. I'll be waiting for you in the emergency room, so hurry up. And can you please stop calling me Snotworm? I've grown up. I have a name now, she concluded, hanging up before he could respond, clearly overwhelmed with urgency. Xiao Kai gazed at his phone, shaking his head with a resigned smile. That Snotworm who had always trailed behind him had truly grown up and now dared to raise her voice at him. Putting away his phone, he turned towards the hospital. It was still quite a distance away. Even with a brisk pace, it would take him nearly an hour to arrive. At that moment, he regretted not taking his electric bike. An hour and a half later, Xiao Kai finally arrived at the hospital entrance. Throughout the journey, Wang Kerson had called him no less than 5 times. To alleviate her worries, he assured her that he was nearly there. Yet only he was aware of the discomfort he was enduring. Inside the emergency department, Wang Kerson, donned in a mask and a white coat, her short hair grazing her ears, was attending to the increasing number of patients while occasionally glancing towards the entrance. At last, the figure she had mentally summoned countless times appeared. Upon spotting Xiao Kai, she excused herself from the patient beside her and hurried over. Leaning against the entrance of the emergency department, Xiao Kai lifted his gaze to see Wang Kerson approaching him briskly. Hey, Snotty, he managed a faint smile, raising a hand in greeting. As Wang Kerson reached his side, she frowned slightly, scrutinizing his face, but the reprimand she wanted to express escaped her lips. You look quite unwell, she said with concern, producing a compact thermometer to take his temperature. As the device displayed the reading, her brows furrowed even deeper. Come with me. With that, she grasped his hand and led him toward the medical staff lounge, chiding him. You claim you aren't feverish, yet your temperature is nearly 39 degrees. This could damage your brain. The X virus is spreading rapidly and severely. We already have several critical cases in our hospital. Once inside the empty staff lounge, Wang Kerson retrieved a box of antipyretics and a thermos from a locker. She handed them to Xiao Kai, instructing, take 1 pill at a time. After you've taken the medicine, rest for a bit before heading home. I'll see if I can procure more medicine later. There's a shortage everywhere, including hospitals. It's too hectic outside for me to leave for long, so make sure you take the medication before you depart. Without allowing him a chance to respond, she opened the door and stepped out. Xiao Kai watched her retreating figure, glanced at the antipyretics in his hand, and silently took one, swallowing it with a sip of warm water from the thermos. Afterward, he returned the thermos to the locker and kept only the medication before stepping out himself. It was not that Xiao Kai wished to avoid resting. Rather, he despised the distinct scent of disinfectant that pervaded hospitals. He preferred to return home and lie in bed. As he exited the lounge, he noticed an influx of people in the emergency department, nearly forcing his way through the crowd. Just as he reached the doorway, he heard Wang Kerson's voice calling him. Xiao Kai, wait a moment, she exclaimed, struggling through the throng until she stood before him. Is there anything else? I've already taken the medication, he replied. Xiao Kai gazed at Wang Kerson, who was slightly out of breath after emerging from the crowd. At times, he felt a sense of helplessness in the face of her incessant concern. Did you come by bike or on foot? He inquired. On foot, she replied. I knew you walked. Take my bike back. It will be quicker. You remember where I parked it, right? And be careful on the way. The emergency room has seen a surge of people injured by pets. They said it was due to sudden animal aggression. Keep your distance from any cats or dogs you encounter. As she fished a set of keys from her pocket, she cautioned him earnestly. I understand. But you should also be cautious. If it gets too dangerous, just head back. There are so many infected patients in the hospital, it's perilous. Given Xiao Kai's temperament, if anyone else were to nag him like that, he would have walked away long ago. Yet Wang Kerson was the only person in this world who genuinely cared for him. Although her concern could be somewhat exasperating, he always found the patience to let her finish. After all, since he was 6 years old, he had never been able to shake her off. I am a doctor. I know how to protect myself. Just be careful on your way back. I need to get busy now. After handing the keys to Xiao Kai, she turned to attend to the increasingly crowded waiting room of patients. Chapter 4. High fever and coma after leaving the hospital. Xiao Kai rode a female-styled electric bike down the road, his eyes occasionally glancing at the keychain that swung back and forth, adorned with a figure that was unmistakably a cartoon version of himself. He possessed a similar figure, a cartoon representation of Wang Kerson, which she had gifted him on his birthday last year. However, He found it somewhat effeminate to attach a figurine to a man's keychain, so he had refrained from doing so, much to Wang Kursen's chagrin. With the convenience of the electric bike, Xiao Kai returned to his rented room in just over 20 minutes. Upon entering, he could no longer hold back and collapsed onto his bed, yearning for a restful sleep. Although the fever-reducing medication had begun to lower his temperature, the relentless headache and body aches persisted, intensifying rather than subsiding. The discomfort had him tossing and turning in bed, unable to find solace, and he sensed that his temperature was beginning to rise once more. The medication seemed to be of little effect. Xiao Kai had a foreboding feeling that today would be even worse than the previous night. In a bid to alleviate his discomfort, he mustered the strength to rise and prepare everything he could to help cool himself down. Although he knew he shouldn't take too much medication, the rising fever left him with little choice. He retrieved a fever-reducing pill from the box and swallowed it before returning to his bed. While he still had a semblance of clarity, he picked up his phone, hoping to find some remedies for fever online. The discomfort caused by the X-virus-induced fever is truly unbearable. He is willing to try any method to alleviate his fever, even if someone suggests the absurd notion of consuming excrement as a remedy. After searching on his phone, Xiao Kai found no effective solutions. Instead, he discovered that many others were experiencing symptoms similar to his. The efficacy of antipyretics was diminishing, with some individuals reporting no relief whatsoever, and other temperature-reducing methods were proving equally futile. Online, there was an abundance of pleas for help in managing fevers. In addition, there was a proliferation of information regarding the X virus, indicating that no nation has yet developed an effective treatment for those infected. Alarmingly, it has also been found that numerous animals are now carriers of the X virus, exhibiting frenzied behavior, leading to injuries inflicted by longtime pets. Although researchers worldwide are diligently working to find a cure, no progress has been made, and even the origins of the X virus remain elusive. Some speculate that environmental pollution has awakened ancient viruses, while others attribute it to a leak from a biochemical laboratory. There are even bold theories suggesting that extraterrestrial beings have unleashed this virus to exterminate humanity and seize control of the Earth. However, none of these hypotheses have been substantiated by evidence. The only certainty is that the X virus has spread globally and is worsening. Many frail, elderly individuals and children, upon contracting the X virus, rapidly develop various complications, with the death toll rising by the moment. Major hospitals have ceased to admit patients with only mild symptoms, as they lack sufficient personnel to attend to critically ill patients. After browsing through the grim news online for a while, Xiao Kai decided to stop. The pervasive negativity only heightened his anxiety, making ignorance preferable. Setting his phone aside, he bore the throbbing pain in his head, closing his eyes and curling up under the blankets, shivering from the pervasive chill enveloping him. Although he had recently taken antipyretics, he felt no relief. His temperature soon surged beyond 40 degrees Celsius and continued to rise. The dangerously high fever soon rendered Xiao Kai disoriented, rendering all his prior preparations useless as he lay on his bed, slipping into unconsciousness, with his temperature escalating past 42 degrees Celsius. Under normal circumstances, a fever rarely exceeds 39 degrees Celsius, yet those infected with the X virus cannot be assessed by standard measures. A fever reaching 42 degrees Celsius signifies an extreme hyperthermic state, potentially impairing brain function and possibly leading to febrile seizures or selective amnesia, with severe cases posing a direct threat to one's life. As Xiao Kai lay in a feverish coma, countless others outside experienced a similar fate. Those in good health were fortunate. Though they were engulfed by fevers that rendered them senseless, they had not yet faced any immediate peril to their lives. However, individuals already afflicted with various ailments were not so fortunate. The high fever acted as a catalyst, swiftly igniting the dormant illnesses within them, leading some with severe conditions to succumb to their suffering. Within just a single day, 1/3 of the world's population perished due to the X virus, plunging the surviving individuals into a state of panic. A rare few who had yet to contract the virus or had not yet developed a fever isolated themselves, while those still burning with fever feared they might be the next victims of the X virus's torment. All those who were feverish and capable of movement flocked to hospitals in droves, driven by the instinct to survive. In their desperation to reach medical care, many disregarded traffic regulations, recklessly driving through red lights. Hospitals and clinics were overflowing with patients, even though everyone understood that no effective treatment existed for the X virus. The sudden loss of so many lives thrust everyone into a state of alarm, compelling them to believe that hospitals were the safest havens available. All waited anxiously, hoping for a viable treatment to be discovered. As for Xiao Kai, who lived alone, his fate hung precariously in the balance after slipping into unconsciousness from the fever. After enduring 3 days of relentless high temperatures, many who could not bear the extreme heat ultimately ceased to breathe in their stupor. Xiao Kai's condition deteriorated. his breaths growing increasingly faint, and it seemed he could stop at any moment. Perhaps it was his indomitable spirit, ingrained in him since childhood, that kept him fighting. Despite the weakness in his breath, he persevered. Xiao Kai remained in a coma for 3 days and nights. On the 5th day, he finally awakened. Having been tormented by fever for an interminable stretch, weakened to the point where he could hardly sit up, he realized that he had not consumed a single drop of water during his ordeal. Upon regaining consciousness, he felt parched, and his hunger was so intense that it felt as if his intestines were twisting. Fortunately, he had placed 2 open bottles of mineral water by his bedside. Otherwise, given his current state, he feared he might perish from starvation in his bed. With great effort, he propped himself against the headboard and gulped down most of 1 bottle of water. A wave of vitality surged through him after finishing it, and with renewed strength, he lay back on the bed for a moment. Eventually, he picked up his phone and, upon seeing the time displayed on the screen, was taken aback to discover that he had been unconscious for 3 days and nights. Gazing at the dwindling battery life on his mobile phone, Xiao Kai rose to charge it, only to be abruptly confronted by an unforeseen power outage. In this age of a seemingly flawless electrical system, he could scarcely fathom such an occurrence. Rising from his bed, he rummaged through the nightstand and unearthed a long-forgotten power bank. After connecting his phone to the charger, he finally opened it to peruse the messages that awaited him. At first glance, he was met with an array of missed calls from Wang Kursin, accompanied by dozens of voice messages and several videos. The earliest message dated back to 3 nights prior, while the most recent had been sent just yesterday afternoon. He clicked on the first voice message, and Wang Kursin's anxious voice resonated through the speaker. Xiao Kai, something has happened at the hospital. The X-virus carriers have gone mad, biting anyone they encounter. You must not go outside. As her voice crackled with urgency, he could also hear strange growls in the background. Oh, Xiao Kai, what should we do? Many have been bitten to death, and I am terrified. Those who died have come back, but they are insane. It's horrific. Many of my colleagues have perished. Hearing her sobs, Xiao Kai felt a tightening in his chest. It had been ages since Wang Kursin had cried, especially since they had entered society. Her voice was laced with an overwhelming sense of fear. Beneath the voice message was a video. Upon opening it, the image was in it many individuals lie on the ground, convulsing uncontrollably. Once they cease their spasms, they swiftly rise and lunge towards those nearby. Through messages from Wang Kursin, Xiao Kai learns that those convulsing on the ground are, in fact, the deceased. The initial individuals to succumb to madness were those who had been scratched by pets. Initially, they displayed aggressive behavior in the emergency room, biting anyone within reach, leading many to believe it was a rabies outbreak. However, chaos erupted when the first person bitten to death rose again. The hospital was soon overwhelmed, as crowds gathered inside and outside, and the situation rapidly spiraled out of control. Upon recognizing the gravity of the situation, Wang Kursin and several colleagues fled to a less populated area on the upper floors of the hospital. They found refuge in a room designated for medical equipment, momentarily securing their safety, yet they remained trapped. Once safe, Wang Kursin captured several official images regarding the X-virus and sent them to Xiao Kai, along with numerous messages and dozens of calls, desperately attempting to ascertain his condition. However, Xiao Kai had been feverish and unconscious for 3 days, unable to respond. From Wang Kursin's screenshots, Xiao Kai discovered that the infected would succumb to madness, and those who died would resurrect, all due to the X-virus. Upon infection, the X-virus not only assimilates the body's cells, but, when its quantity reaches a critical threshold, it explodes, transforming a sane individual into a bloodthirsty maniac. Upon death, the X-virus rapidly divides and assimilates other cells, controlling the deceased to seek fresh flesh for sustenance, thus enabling its evolution. This explains why the deranged and the resurrected aggressively attack the unaffected. Some individuals, however, may naturally recover from the X-virus. Although officials have yet to determine the cause of these spontaneous recoveries, the authorities now classify the resurrected as zombies, highly sensitive to sound and the scent of blood. As these zombies are controlled by the X-virus postmortem, they possess only the primal instinct to seek fresh flesh, with most of their other senses having diminished. Consequently, severing limbs has little effect. Only by destroying the brain, which governs the central nervous system, can one truly eliminate them. Upon absorbing this information, Xiao Kai comprehended the extent of the events that had transpired over the past 3 days and felt a sense of relief that he had not succumbed to madness and become a zombie. The final message from Wang Kursin conveyed her despair, informing him that the hospital had lost power and her phone was nearly dead. Trapped in the room with her colleagues, they had no food, and she feared that in a couple of days, they might all perish from starvation. Sensing the despair in her words, Xiao Kai's heart tightened. If it were anyone else, they could easily turn a blind eye, but for Wang Kursin, Xiao Kai could never remain indifferent. Chapter 6. Resuming the Blade. The mere thought of Wang Kurson being trapped in a hospital besieged by countless zombies, possibly too frightened to even shed a tear, compelled him to rise from his bed. However, as soon as he stood, his legs buckled, and he found himself seated once more. The urgency of the moment causing him to forget that apart from consuming a bottle of mineral water, he had not eaten anything for 3 days. Given his current physical state, he was far from capable of rescuing Wang Kurson. Even stepping outside this room would leave him vulnerable. Yet, Wang Kurson had been his companion since their days in the orphanage, the sole person who genuinely cared for him in this world, and he could not abandon her. Sitting on the bed, Xiao Kai reached for another bottle of water, gulping down half of it to alleviate the gnawing hunger in his stomach. After resting for a while and regaining some strength, he stood up again. His first order of business was to prepare a meal for himself. Although his home was stocked with rice and vegetables, the time required to cook was too lengthy. Moreover, after 3 days of fasting, he doubted his stomach could handle rice. So he resolved to boil some softer noodles instead. In the kitchen, he ignited the gas stove and set a pot of water to boil. From the refrigerator, he retrieved some meat and eggs. Fortunately, the power outage had not lasted long enough for the meat to spoil, despite having partially thawed. While waiting for the water to boil, Xiao Kai bent down beside his bed and, to his surprise, pulled out a machete measuring over half a meter in length from beneath it. It turned out that when he first entered society, he had mingled with some unsavory characters. Growing up in an orphanage, he had learned to stand up for himself to avoid being bullied, and thus he had become acquainted with various delinquents. After leaving the orphanage and stepping into the world, he often followed these individuals around. Although he had never engaged in serious crimes, he had been involved in his fair share of brawls and petty thefts, frequently visiting the police station. Having spent considerable time on the streets, he inevitably made enemies. When he was with other delinquents, it was generally manageable, as they traveled in groups of 3 or 5. Yet, when he returned to his rented room alone, he feared retaliation. Although being found would not likely cost him his life, a severe beating was almost certain. To protect himself, he had hidden an iron rod and a machete beneath his bed. He had used the iron rod once, but had not touched the machete since stowing it away. Later, when the local government intensified its crackdown on organized crime, many of his associates were apprehended. Xiao Kai had managed to escape this fate due to his minor infractions. From that moment on, he realized that mingling with criminals would eventually lead to incarceration. Although he never considered himself a virtuous person, he was determined not to lose his freedom. Moreover, with Wang Kurson persistently urging him to return to the right path, he serendipitously found employment as a factory security guard, a position he has held ever since. The machete in his possession, crafted from the shock-absorbing steel of a heavy-duty truck, is both thick and weighty. Despite the years that have elapsed since its sharpening, the blade still glimmers ominously, leaving no doubt about its capacity to sever limbs with ease. Reflecting on his past, Xiao Kai cannot help but admire his former self for daring to commission such a formidable weapon. Fortunately, when an individual sought revenge against him years ago, they arrived with only 2 accomplices and were swiftly repelled by Xiao Kai wielding a mere iron rod. Since that encounter, no one has dared to confront him again, and the machete has remained unused. Should the day ever come when it is needed, Xiao Kai muses that he may not be standing here at all. Nonetheless, this weapon has made it considerably easier for him to seek out additional armaments, as such items are unequivocally prohibited and nearly impossible to procure. Having a reliable weapon is of paramount importance. As the water in the kitchen began to boil with a bubbling sound, Xiao Kai set the machete down on the bed and hurried to the kitchen to prepare noodles. Before long, the enticing aroma of meaty noodles wafted through the air. Just as he was about to add an egg to the pot, he heard a peculiar scratching sound at the door. He quickly extinguished the flame and returned to his room, seizing the machete from the bed and stealthily approaching the door. The scratching grew increasingly insistent, accompanied by intermittent squeaks reminiscent of a mouse's call. Listening intently, he could not help but ponder whether it could truly be a mouse at the door. Yet, the volume of the scratching seemed excessive for such a creature. What size of rodent could make such a ruckus? Hesitant to open the door and confront whatever lay beyond, he stood tense behind it, gripping the machete, resolved to strike down whatever might enter. As the scratching intensified and became more frantic, cracks began to form in the wooden door. Through these fissures, Xiao Kai was astonished to discover that the source of the scratching was 3 gray mice, each the size of a domestic cat. He had never encountered rodents of such magnitude, which reminded him of the mutated beasts seen in films, typically the result of plants or animals being infected by radiation or viruses, leading to their grotesque growth. Observing the sharp, elongated features of the rodents, with their blood-red eyes, he felt an immediate surge of primal aggression. As the cracks widened, the mutated mice outside emitted excited calls. Realizing that these creatures could breach the door at any moment, Xiao Kai positioned himself to the side, raising the machete in readiness to strike at the incoming intruders. Typically, Mice are nocturnal and skittish. Yet these three cat-sized aberrations were anything but timid. He considered it fortunate if they refrained from attacking once they broke through. If it were an ordinary day, armed with a sharp machete, he would have swiftly opened the door and struck down the invading mutant rat. However, his current physical condition rendered him incapable of any vigorous movement. Confronted with such swift creatures, Xiao Kai could only hope to take advantage of the door's obstruction, aiming to slay one or two as they burst through. Suddenly, the sound of the wooden door splintering echoed, and just as Xiao Kai prepared to swing his machete, a massive mutant rat surged into the room through the breach. The creature moved with such speed that he barely had time to react before a second rat followed suit. Faced with this onslaught, he could only rely on instinct, striking down with his blade as the third rat charged in. The machete fell heavily to the ground, sparking as the last rat let out a chilling squeal before entering the room. Gazing at the severed rat tail, which measured over a meter and was thicker than his finger, Xiao Kai lamented that if he had acted just a moment sooner, he was certain he could have cleaved the final rat in two. Chapter 7. The Mutant Rats. As three mutant rats flooded into the room, Xiao Kai hastily turned to survey his surroundings. Before him stood three massive gray creatures, each larger than an average cat. One of the rats was tailless, blood gushing from the wound where its tail had once been. Perhaps due to a lingering fear of humans, the trio did not immediately attack, but instead huddled together. Three pairs of blood-red eyes fixed intently on him. The frenzied, bloodthirsty gaze of those crimson eyes sent chills down Xiao Kai's spine, particularly from the tailless rat, which glared at him with palpable hostility. Perhaps fueled by its bloodlust or anger at having lost its tail, the tailless rat suddenly lunged toward him with astonishing speed. In the confined space of the room, all Xiao Kai could perceive was a gray blur charging at him, and before he could react, it was upon him. A sharp pain shot through his calf, causing him to cry out in agony. Looking down, he saw the tailless rat clamped onto his leg, its sharp teeth piercing through his pant leg and into his flesh, the incisors digging deep enough for him to feel them against his bone. The searing pain in his leg, coupled with the sight of crimson blood staining his trousers, awakened the latent ferocity within him. Once, he had thrived on confrontation, never fearing a fight. Yet, the harsh realities of life had dulled his edges, teaching him that such a reckless disposition was ill-suited for survival in society. For the sake of his livelihood, he had suppressed that fierce nature. In the present moment, the excruciating pain in his leg and the warm trickle of blood awakened the ferocity within Xiao Kai, akin to a ferocious tiger stirring from slumber. A glint of menace flickered in his eyes as he wielded the cleaver, which sliced through the air with a fierce whoosh, striking down upon the evolved rat that had latched onto his leg. Perhaps it was the severance of its tail that ignited a deep-seated animosity towards Xiao Kai. Instead of evading the descending blade, the tailless creature widened its jaws, seemingly intent on crushing his leg bone with a single bite. The cleaver, descending with tremendous speed, grazed past Xiao Kai's knee before the sharp edge cleaved through the stubborn rat, severing it in two with a swift stroke. A warm spray of blood erupting onto the ground. After dispatching the rat at his feet, Xiao Kai nonchalantly flicked the blood from his cleaver and kicked away the severed head still clinging to his leg, his gaze shifting to the remaining two evolved rats. Sensing the latent ferocity emanating from Xiao Kai, the two remaining rats exhibited a restless frenzy, circling in place. However, the scent of blood soon heightened their aggression, intensifying the crimson hue in their eyes. Although the demise of one rat had instilled a sense of peril, the allure of blood quickly redirected their focus towards Xiao Kai. Indeed, the moment their eyes locked onto him, they charged forward in unison. In the confined space of the room, Xiao Kai found himself with little room to evade. Given his injured leg, he doubted his ability to dodge their simultaneous assault. Resolved to confront the threat head-on, he gritted his teeth and stood his ground. His eyes fixed on the oncoming foes, the cleaver raised and poised for action. As the two evolved rats lunged at him, Xiao Kai swung the cleaver towards one of them. Yet, the rat's speed was astonishing. His strike missed entirely, not even grazing a single hair. Seizing the opportunity, the other rat clawed at his uninjured leg, inflicting pain that left him unsteady on both limbs. His body, already weakened, faltered further, but he managed to lean against the wall, barely maintaining his balance. No sooner had he steadied himself than the two formidable rats charged at him once more. With no means to evade their assault or land a counterattack, he could only watch helplessly as their claws tore into him, inflicting swift wounds before they retreated. Though mice are inherently timid, they possess a remarkable intelligence, and the evolved variants were even more cunning. Realizing that Xiao Kai could neither dodge nor retaliate, the two rats escalated their relentless assault. Before long, Xiao Kai's legs were marred with an array of wounds, both scratches and bites, the vivid crimson of his blood staining his trousers. The pungent scent of blood further incited the two evolved rats into a frenzied state. perhaps dissatisfied with merely targeting Xiao Kai's legs. When the two evolved mice charged at him once more, one of the slightly larger rodents unexpectedly leaped into the air. Its claws aimed at Xiao Kai's face. As the creature soared, a glimmer of determination ignited in Xiao Kai's eyes. Without hesitation, he swung his machete down upon the airborne mouse. Die! He bellowed, the sharp blade descending with lethal intent, striking the creature's skull with a resounding crack. The evolved mouse's head was cleaved in two, rendering it lifeless. After dispatching the leaping mouse, Xiao Kai gasped for breath, turning his gaze to the last remaining giant mouse. The exertion of that single strike had drained him of his final reserves of strength. He could no longer stand, and gradually slid down the wall to the ground. During the earlier confrontation with the two evolved mice, he had found himself unable to dodge or retaliate, his spirit weighed down by the relentless speed of his adversaries. Each time they lunged to claw or bite, they swiftly retreated, leaving him no opportunity to strike. It wasn't until the airborne mouse, deprived of leverage, became vulnerable mid-flight that he seized the moment to deliver the fatal blow. Though he had slain two of the three evolved mice that had invaded the room, he now lacked the energy to wield his machete against the last remaining foe. This solitary mouse, after glancing at its fallen companions, emitted a series of chattering sounds but made no move to attack. Instead, it observed Xiao Kai from a distance with its blood-red eyes. Clutching his machete, Xiao Kai remained motionless against the wall, squinting at the agitated mouse. Though he lacked the strength to swing his weapon, passively awaiting his demise was not in his nature. Even if death was inevitable, he resolved to take this last evolved mouse with him. Chapter 8. Unwillingness to submit. The remaining evolved mouse, evidently more cautious, showed no inclination to approach, despite Xiao Kai sitting there, feigning death as blood pooled around him. Watching the hesitant creature, Xiao Kai felt a surge of urgency. He had originally intended to lure the mouse closer by pretending to be lifeless, planning to suddenly spring into action and seize it. Though his strength was waning, he was confident that if he could grasp the mouse, he would be able to slay it before it could escape. However, the mouse remained too wary, unwilling to advance, while Xiao Kai's wounds continued to bleed profusely. If this continued, it would not be long before he succumbed to blood loss, without even needing the mouse to strike. With half-closed eyes, he observed the evolved mouse pacing in circles, occasionally pausing to glance in his direction. He wondered if his unwavering gaze was causing the creature to sense danger, which was why it refrained from approaching. Resolving to alter his strategy, he decided to shut his eyes completely, no longer watching the cautious mouse. Not long after he closed his eyes, he heard the sound of the evolved mouse circling around him, its claws scratching against the ground. But soon, the room fell into an eerie silence. Feeling that closing his eyes might be beneficial, Xiao Kai slowed his breathing and patiently awaited the approach of the evolved mouse. However, after nearly 10 minutes, the room remained utterly still, leading him to question whether the creature had already departed. After a while, he sensed a slight dizziness in his mind, a consequence of excessive blood loss, and he found it increasingly difficult to resist the urge to open his eyes and confirm whether the evolved mouse had truly left. Just as he could no longer suppress his curiosity and was about to open his eyes, he suddenly felt a tug at the hem of his pants. A surge of joy filled his heart, for he realized that the evolved mouse had silently approached his side. Closer, come closer. As the tugging at his pants grew more insistent, he fought to remain motionless, silently urging the creature to draw nearer. The large, gray evolved mouse, sensing the danger dissipate after Xiao Kai closed his eyes, cautiously moved closer. Upon nearing him, it did not immediately attack. Instead, it incessantly tugged at his pant leg. Testing Xiao Kai's response, the prolonged stillness of Xiao Kai gradually assuaged the mouse's wariness, prompting it to crawl up his leg towards his abdomen. Xiao Kai bore the pain inflicted by the mouse's sharp claws as if he were truly lifeless, refraining from any movement. Just as the hefty gray evolved mouse reached his abdomen, a mere 10 centimeters from his left hand, he suddenly opened his eyes and swiftly grasped the mouse's back with his left hand. The mouse, caught off guard by this sudden action, emitted a high-pitched squeal and began to thrash violently, its claws leaving deep scratches across Xiao Kai's body. The strength of the mouse's struggle exceeded Xiao Kai's expectations, nearly allowing it to break free from his grip. To gain complete control, he pressed the mouse between his legs, using the force of his thighs to firmly secure its body. Once he had thoroughly subdued the creature, Xiao Kai positioned his machete against the mouse's neck. After taking a deep breath, he abruptly drew the blade across its throat, carving a wound that penetrated to the bone. Scalding blood erupted from the mouse's neck, and sensing its impending demise, the creature fought with all its might. Yet, Xiao Kai was equally as Xiao Kai felt the overwhelming dizziness from excessive blood loss. The evolved rat finally exhausted its last ounce of strength and ceased its struggle. With the final remnants of his energy spent, Xiao Kai released the now lifeless creature. Collapsing into a heap, indifferent to the deceased evolved rat lying on his leg. Sitting on the ground, he surveyed the once orderly room, now reduced to chaos. With crimson blood staining the surroundings and 3 large corpses of evolved rats lying motionless within the confines of the room. A bitter smile crept across Xiao Kai's face as he reflected on the situation. If his memory served him correctly, Wang Kersen had mentioned in a message that injuries inflicted by animals could lead to infection by the X virus, ultimately resulting in one becoming a zombie. He never imagined that after enduring the initial infection of the X virus, tormented by a high fever for 3 days and nights, he would ultimately be on the brink of becoming one of those frenzied, bloodthirsty zombies due to these 3 evolved rats. The thought of his body being controlled by the virus to attack other survivors, to drink their blood and consume their flesh, filled him with revulsion. If only he could twist his head off, then he would not have to face such a fate. With this thought, Xiao Kai glanced at the machete he had carelessly cast aside. It could surely sever a head in a single stroke. However, the idea of decapitating himself seemed impossible. Even for in this world, anyone who harbors attachments or cannot let go of certain people or matters cannot be free from the fear of death. Those who proclaim their fearlessness towards death merely do so because, before its arrival, countless uncertainties remain. A flicker of hope resides within them, leading them to believe that they will escape its grasp. Yet, when death is inescapably imminent and nothing can alter that fate, especially when one is acutely aware of the moment of their demise, how many can truly remain composed? Xiao Kai sat quietly on the ground, staring vacantly at the corpse of the evolved rat before him, awaiting the inevitable arrival of death. Though his heart brimmed with unwillingness, he felt powerless to change his fate. Just as he had surrendered to despair, he suddenly noticed a faint red glow flickering at the head of the deceased rat. However, as he attempted to discern its source, all he could perceive was a grotesque array of decaying flesh and fresh blood. He presumed that the blood loss had ushered him into hallucinations, prompting him to dismiss the sight. At that moment, the red light flickered once more, accompanied by an intriguing scent wafting towards him. This aroma evoked a sensation akin to that of hunger, reminiscent of encountering one's favorite dish unexpectedly. Taking a deep breath, Xiao Kai followed the alluring scent, his gaze drawn irresistibly towards the spot where the red glow had appeared on the rat's corpse, his body instinctively moving closer. The nearer he approached the corpse, the more potent the scent became. Upon reaching the side of the evolved rat, he could no longer restrain himself and reached out. He pried open the shattered skull of the rat, groping about in search of the luminous object, further fracturing the already broken head in the process. At last, he uncovered a ruby-like crystal nestled within the rat's shattered cranium, its prismatic form approximately the size of a quail egg. It resembled a red gem, feeling cool to the touch, and upon closer inspection, he discerned a faint crimson liquid coursing within. After wiping the congealed blood from the crystal onto his clothing, he held it up to scrutinize it further. Upon closer inspection, he noticed a tiny fissure on the crystal's surface, likely a result of his earlier clumsy handling. The peculiar scent seemed to emanate from this very crack. Just as he contemplated bringing the crystal closer to his nose, a droplet of glowing red liquid oozed from the fissure, cascading down the smooth surface and falling to the ground. Instantly, the captivating aroma surged into Xiao Kai's nostrils. Overwhelmed by the rich and intoxicating scent, his stomach betrayed him with an audible growl. The combination of hunger and the tantalizing fragrance ignited an impulsive desire to devour the crimson crystal. Yet, upon gazing at his bloodied hands and the grotesque remains of the evolved rat, he managed to suppress the urge to consume the crystal. As the crimson liquid flowed forth once more, wafting an alluring and peculiar scent, Xiao Kai could not help but muse, "I am but a man destined for death. What is there left to fear? Whether I eat or not, death awaits. Since you so wish for me to partake, let me savor your essence before my demise." With this thought, he relinquished the restraint of his impulses, tilted his head back, and raised the red crystal to his lips, applying pressure with his fingers. With a soft crack, the crystal split in two, releasing a viscous, softly glowing liquid that cascaded into his open mouth. A chill coursed through him as a droplet landed on his tongue, swiftly sliding down his throat into his belly, reminiscent of a small morsel of jelly. Yet, this jelly bore no flavor, and the strange aroma dissipated entirely upon entering Xiao Kai's stomach, as if it had never existed. With the disappearance of this peculiar taste, the hunger that had driven him to desire sustenance vanished as well. He gazed at the now translucent, glass-like shards of the crystal in his hand, momentarily lost in thought, pondering how he had mustered the audacity to ingest such a repulsive substance. Just as he wrestled with this bewilderment, a sudden warmth enveloped his abdomen, spreading rapidly throughout his entire being. This sensation of warmth escalated, igniting a feverish feeling that coursed through him, yet aside from the heat, he experienced no discomfort. Rather, it brought him an overwhelming sense of comfort. Alas, this sensation was fleeting, as an intense tingling accompanied by excruciating pain struck him, causing him to collapse onto the ground. Curling into a fetal position, he felt as though countless insects were crawling beneath his skin, each muscle and nerve alight with an unbearable itch and ache. While his bones seemed to be scraped with a knife, he wished to scream, but found his muscles unresponsive, rendering him voiceless. The most terrifying aspect was that, despite the loss of bodily control, his consciousness remained vividly alert, allowing him to perceive every pang of discomfort. This unprecedented clarity of mind not only heightened his awareness of the sensations coursing through him, but also enabled him to discern the expulsion of something from the wounds inflicted by the evolved rat. Gradually, he sensed a substance being purged, unmistakably more than mere blood. It felt as though something was being expelled, mingled with the crimson liquid. If Xiao Kai could direct his gaze toward his wounds, he would observe that the blood flowing from them was a deep black. As the dark fluid continued to seep out, it gradually transformed to red, and astonishingly, the wounds upon his body began to heal at a visible pace. As the blood that flowed from the wound transformed into a vivid crimson hue, the injury had completely healed, leaving no trace of the previous affliction. With the continuous mending of the wound, the pervasive itchiness that had enveloped his entire body gradually subsided. After a mere 10 minutes, once the final wound on his body had fully recuperated, the irritating sensation vanished entirely, and Xiao Kai felt a renewed sense of control over his body. The first action he took upon regaining command of his physical form was to turn over and sit up, rolling up his pant leg to inspect the injury on his leg. Although he had sensed the healing process in a vague manner, he feared it might merely be an illusion. Thus he hurriedly sought to confirm with his own eyes that the wound had indeed healed. Chapter 10. The wound has healed. As Xiao Kai moved, a cacophony akin to sizzling beans resonated from within his bones, and following that sound, a wave of refreshing sensation coursed through his entire being. Upon observing his leg, devoid of any wounds, he was momentarily taken aback. For a fleeting instant, he even questioned whether he had perished and entered another realm, or perhaps was simply ensnared in a dream. However, when he pinched the area on his thigh where the wound had once been, the sharp pang of pain distinctly affirmed the reality of his situation. Having confirmed his existence, Xiao Kai jubilantly rose to his feet. At that moment, aside from feeling somewhat uncomfortable due to the sticky remnants of blood, he perceived his physical condition to be unprecedentedly robust. A sensation washed over him, suggesting that even if confronted by two massive evolved rodents, he could effortlessly rend them to pieces. This thought led him to recall the liquid contained within the crystal he had consumed earlier. Could that be the evolution crystal core, a phenomenon frequently depicted in various cinematic works? It was evident that the transformations occurring within him were directly linked to that core. Yet, he pondered whether there might be any lingering repercussions, or if he might inadvertently metamorphose into some monstrous being. Nevertheless, for the time being, it appeared to be entirely beneficial. Xiao Kai's eyes sparkled with excitement as he gazed at the bodies of the other two evolved rodents on the ground. Such large specimens of evolved rodents were a sight he had never encountered before. It was highly plausible that the emergence of the evolution crystal core was due to these rodents undergoing transformation for some unknown reason, resulting in the miraculous cores manifesting atop their heads. He wondered if the other two carcasses still harbored evolution crystal cores. Seizing the machete from the ground, he aimed to sever the heads of the remaining evolved rodents to ascertain whether any crystals remained. However, as he grasped the machete, he was taken aback to discover that the once heavy weapon now felt remarkably lighter in his hand. Perplexed, he scrutinized the machete, beginning to suspect that perhaps his strength had increased. The machete, not only robust but slightly longer than those available on the market, weighed at least 10 pounds. Aside from an enhancement in his physical power, he could fathom no other explanation. Armed with the machete, Xiao Kai approached the severed head of the rodent and, with precision, struck down upon its center. The machete descended upon the rat's head, effortlessly cleaving it in two, its tip striking the ground with a resounding thud. Scattering a flurry of sparks, Xiao Kai raised the machete, furrowing his brow as he examined the now curled tip. A testament to the weapon's formidable construction from lightweight steel used in automobiles, far surpassing ordinary steel in both hardness and resilience. Earlier, he had exercised caution, fearing damage to the crystal within the rat's head, yet still, with a single strike, he had severed it cleanly. The curling of the blade's tip suggested that his strength had indeed increased, a most unexpected delight. However, disappointment washed over him as he dissected the heads and bodies of the other two evolved rats in search of a second evolution crystal, to no avail. Perhaps such crystals were not a guaranteed trait of every evolved creature. Glancing at the gruesome remnants of flesh and blood, an uncomfortable sensation enveloped him, prompting a hurried retreat to the bathroom. After a thorough wash and a change of clothes, he emerged feeling refreshed. As he passed through the kitchen, Xiao Kai was struck by the sight of his boiled noodles, now a clump devoid of broth. Thankfully, he had turned off the heat before leaving, otherwise, the pot might have suffered irreparable damage. Despite the noodles' unfortunate transformation, their aroma awakened his appetite, which had been dulled by the tension of battling the three evolved rats. Now reminded of his hunger, he could no longer resist, disregarding the state of the noodles as he filled a bowl and began to eat, all while boiling water for another pot of noodles. To his surprise, he found himself cooking and eating in tandem, ultimately preparing 3 pots in succession, the last yielding enough noodles for 2 hearty meals. After consuming such a substantial amount, he felt merely satisfied, not fully sated. Were it not for the urgency to rescue Wang Kurson, he would have relished the opportunity to prepare another 2 large pots. He had never imagined noodles could be so delectable. Reluctantly setting aside his bowl and chopsticks, he began to gather his belongings. His foremost concern was sustenance, calculating the time. Wang Kurson had been trapped in the hospital for 3 days. He pondered whether she had managed to eat during that time. If not, it wouldn't be long before hunger claimed her life, even before the zombies had a chance to strike. He scoured the room, uncovering only a few packets of instant noodles and some biscuits, a meager supply for a boy who seldom indulged in snacks. Nevertheless, he hoped to find more food at nearby shops. In addition to provisions, he prepared a change of clothes, packing everything into a single backpack. Approaching the window, he peered outside to assess the situation before venturing out. The street, once devoid of vehicles due to traffic restrictions, was now cluttered with abandoned cars, remnants of those who had attempted to flee. Surrounding these vehicles, a throng of zombies wandered aimlessly. The situation outside was far more dire than he had anticipated. Just moments ago, he had contemplated procuring a motorcycle or an electric scooter to navigate through, but now, upon witnessing the congested thoroughfare, it became evident that even walking would prove challenging. He observed at least 3 locations where a dozen vehicles had collided, completely obstructing the road. One of these spots was engulfed in flames, with acrid black smoke billowing skyward, its foul odor reaching him even from several hundred meters away. As he peered out from his window, he noted that the zombies moved with a stiff, sluggish gait. If all the undead were indeed like this, he felt a glimmer of hope in rescuing Wang Kurson, provided he could avoid being surrounded. To evade the encroaching horde, he needed to find a route with fewer zombies. The streets were teeming with them, so steering clear of the roads was imperative. After much contemplation, he recalled a half-finished development not far from his location, which bordered an old district. For years, developers had been negotiating with the local residents regarding demolitions, but to no avail, leaving the old district intact. Currently, the area was sparsely populated, primarily inhabited by the elderly, making it the least crowded part of Linhai City. On the opposite side of this old district lay the hospital's parking lot, which appeared to be the safest route to reach the hospital. With his path determined, Xiao Kai hesitated no longer. He donned his backpack, grasped his machete, and prepared to set forth. Chapter 11. The first encounter with zombies standing behind a door that had already been breached. Xiao Kai confirmed that there were no immediate threats outside before cautiously opening the door and peering out. However, a mere glance was enough for him to retract his head swiftly, had he not been certain of his own survival. That brief glimpse might have led him to believe he had stepped into hell. In the dimly lit corridor outside, several mangled corpses lay scattered, their bodies bearing the marks of gnawing from mutated rodents. Dark red stains of blood marred the walls and floor, and in the distance, 3 indistinct figures lurked in the shadows. Xiao Kai's room was at the corridor's end, while the staircase was situated in the middle, making it impossible to descend without encountering those 3 figures, all of whom were unmistakably transformed into zombies. Gazing at the machete in his hand, a fierce determination crossed his face. With a sudden burst of resolve, he flung the door open and stepped out. There was no avoiding the confrontation. He could not remain hidden in his room indefinitely. Wang Kurson was waiting for him to rescue her. As soon as he emerged, the overwhelming stench of blood assaulted his senses, inciting a wave of nausea. He fought against the urge to vomit, stepping over 2 dismembered corpses as he advanced toward the trio of zombies. Perhaps it was the sound of the door that startled them, for all 3 turned simultaneously to regard Xiao Kai. Upon realizing he was a living human, they emitted a guttural roar and charged toward him. However, their stiff movements rendered their speed akin to that of a leisurely jog, perhaps even slower. As the zombies drew nearer, Xiao Kai recognized that the 3 creatures were once residents of this very floor. Their clothes, once pristine and tidy, were now tattered and stained with blood, and the fragments of flesh clinging to their exposed teeth were all too evident. In his previous altercations, Xiao Kai had wielded bricks, steel pipes, and bottles, but he had never resorted to a cleaver against a living being. After all, such an act could lead to loss of life. Despite the knowledge that he was no longer facing human beings, he found himself hesitating, unable to bring the cleaver down upon the approaching zombies. Regardless of their transformation, they still retained the semblance of humanity, evoking within him an unsettling urge to take a life. Holding the cleaver aloft, he retreated before the advancing zombies, quickly finding himself at the threshold of his own room. With no further ground to retreat, he faced the grim reality that he could no longer avoid confrontation. Raising the cleaver, any hesitation evaporated as he swung with great force towards the neck of the foremost zombie. The blade met flesh with astonishing ease, gliding through without resistance, and the creature's head toppled to the ground. Xiao Kai was taken aback by the simplicity of the act, momentarily stunned, while the other two zombies seized the opportunity to lunge at him. Reacting swiftly, he lifted his foot and kicked one of the zombies, sending it sprawling backward. He deftly sidestepped the claws of another, maneuvering behind it to deliver a powerful strike to its back. The blow nearly cleaved the creature in two, and he distinctly heard the sickening crunch of bone snapping. Just as he believed he had incapacitated the zombie, it astonishingly turned, mouth agape, lunging for his neck. Xiao Kai's heart raced. He had never anticipated that such a devastating blow would fail to vanquish a zombie. As he retreated from the snapping jaws, he forgot about the zombie he had previously kicked, and in his retreat, his foot landed upon its leg. Instantly, his balance faltered, and he began to topple backward. At that moment, the fallen zombie had risen to a seated position, ensuring that Xiao Kai would land directly into its embrace. With its arms outstretched, it would surely ensnare him, leaving him vulnerable to the other zombie's assault. In a moment of desperation, he propelled himself off the corridor wall with a powerful kick, forcing his body to shift sideways just in time to avoid the grasp of the zombie behind him. As he fell to the ground, he quickly rolled aside, narrowly escaping the oncoming zombie's grasp. Once on his feet, he swiftly resumed his assault, the cleaver slicing down towards the zombie that had yet to regain its footing. Upon realizing that other body parts could not vanquish the undead, he struck decisively at the zombie's neck. Blood spattered as the incapacitated creature was swiftly decapitated by Xiao Kai's blade. The last zombie that lunged at him met a similar fate, cleaved down with a single stroke. The headless corpse collapsed motionlessly to the ground, and as he gazed at the lifeless body, a sudden wave of nausea washed over him, compelling him to drop to his knees and retch. Despite incessantly reassuring himself that zombies were no longer human, the sight of the dark crimson blood pooling from the severed neck evoked a sensation akin to having taken 3 lives. This was an unprecedented feeling, an amalgamation of fear, exhilaration, and adrenaline coursed through him, causing his body to tremble. It was only after expelling the remnants of undigested noodles that he slowly regained his composure. Xiao Kai wiped the corners of his mouth with his sleeve and rose from the ground, turning to descend the stairs. After his initial encounter, he felt considerably more at ease while clearing the zombies on the 4th floor. To him, these undead beings no longer seemed as terrifying. Their movements were stiff, and their speed was sluggish. A resolute individual, armed with a blade, could easily slay a zombie, even when confronted by 3 or 5 of them. There remained a significant chance of escape unscathed. Regrettably, most people succumbed to fear in the face of the undead, instinctively seeking to flee. Yet, the more one feared, the easier it became to fall prey to a zombie's bite. Those who perished from bites transformed into sustenance for the others, while those merely wounded would soon join their ranks. The survivors, witnessing the transformation of bitten individuals into zombies, only deepened their terror. The number of zombies proliferated like a rolling snowball, and soon, over 70% of the world's population had either succumbed to zombification or become food for the undead. A few courageous souls who dared to fight back were ultimately overwhelmed by the relentless tide of zombies, leaving only a select few capable of surviving through strength and suitable weaponry. Having been in countless brawls throughout his life, Xiao Kai discovered that once he shed his fear of the grotesque zombies, their stiff movements posed no threat to him. Furthermore, his current strength far exceeded that of his past. Each strike of his machete severed the zombies' heads with ease, rendering them utterly harmless. As he dispatched more zombies, he realized that it was not strictly necessary to behead them to ensure their demise. Damaging the head would suffice to eliminate the threat. Xiao Kai continued his methodical descent, encountering an increasing number of zombies. However, in the narrow corridors, he faced only 3 or 5 at a time. After more than 2 hours of diligent effort, he finally cleared the building of its undead inhabitants. Chapter 12. I am no longer normal. Xiao Kai stood at the entrance on the 1st floor, peering through the small window of the security door. Outside, a multitude of zombies had gathered, easily numbering in the dozens. Fortunately, the security door had remained closed for an extended period, Otherwise, the noise he had made while dispatching the zombies earlier would have surely drawn them inside. However, he was reluctant to open the door recklessly, as he could already see dozens of zombies, with countless more lurking beyond his view. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Kai turned back and returned to his room on the 5th floor. He rummaged through his bedside cabinet and retrieved a Bluetooth speaker, roughly the size of a soda can. Though the speaker was a few years old and its sound quality left much to be desired, its volume was sufficiently loud. After acquiring the speaker, he took out some thawed pork from the refrigerator. He recalled Wang Kersen mentioning that these zombies were particularly sensitive to sound and the scent of blood. He devised a plan to use the speaker and the pork to divert the zombies at the entrance. Descending back to the ground floor, he opted to use the window at the end of the 2nd floor corridor. After placing the pork and the connected speaker into a bag, he suspended it about 3 meters above the ground with a rope. To maximize the volume, he set a limited selection of DJ tracks on his phone to loop, and soon, the Bluetooth speaker erupted with a deafening sound. From the 2nd floor window, he watched as an uncountable number of zombies turned to face the wall where the speaker and pork were suspended, rushing towards it. Before long, the area below was teeming with zombies. Observing the growing horde, Xiao Kai cautiously approached the security door at the entrance. As he had anticipated, the zombies congregated outside had vanished. Through the door, he could see many more zombies racing towards the source of the DJ music. Hiding behind the security door, he watched the relentless stream of zombies until not a single one remained in sight. Only then did he carefully unlock the door. Stepping outside, he turned to witness a scene that made his skin crawl. At the end of the building, where the speaker and pork hung, a throng of zombies had gathered. At least 1,000 strong. They were craning their necks and pushing forward, with many falling over under the weight of those behind them, trampled mercilessly by the endless tide. Just a fleeting glance at the spectacle sent shivers down his spine. This horde must have drawn every zombie in the vicinity. Should he be encircled by them? Even with extraordinary strength, escape would be improbable, unless he possessed the ability to fly. Not daring to linger, he made sure that the nearby zombies had all been drawn away before sprinting towards a nearby construction site. Though the site appeared close, navigating through the maze of buildings would take him at least 10 minutes. He could only hope that the zombies along the way had all been attracted by the sound. However, as he ran, he sensed something was amiss. His speed was astonishingly swift, a pace he could never have achieved before. It felt less like running and more akin to riding an electric scooter, with the rushing wind at his ears matching the speed of such a ride. Before he could even savor the exhilaration of such speed, he arrived at the construction site's entrance. Moving at a pace more than 2 or 3 times his usual velocity, with a horde of zombies trailing behind him. Upon seeing the tightly shut gates of the construction site, Xiao Kai, driven by a sudden impulse, did not decelerate. As he approached the entrance, he leapt forward with great force. His intention was to vault up and brace his hands against the upper edge of the gate, then flip inside. However, to his astonishment, he soared directly over it. Upon landing, Xiao Kai turned back in disbelief to gaze at the imposing gate towering over 2 meters, then glanced at his own legs. It was only then that he belatedly recognized that he could no longer be considered an ordinary person. After narrowly escaping death, all his wounds had healed. His strength had significantly increased, and now he discovered that not only was his speed vastly superior to what it once was, but his jumping ability surpassed that of even the world's high jump champions. Remarkably, despite having fought zombies for nearly 2 to 3 hours, and then sprinting a considerable distance to leap into the construction site, he felt no hint of breathlessness. Upon awakening in the room, he had sensed something was amiss with his body, but having just escaped a life-threatening situation, he was engulfed in a state of exhilaration and paid little mind to it. Later, while battling zombies in the narrow corridors of the building, he had little room to fully express his newfound speed, and his heightened adrenaline obscured his awareness of the changes within him. It was only after achieving a feat impossible for an ordinary person that he came to realize that his bodily transformations defied conventional explanation. Once inside the construction site, he quickly attracted the attention of the zombies within. This site was a housing development consisting of several high-rise buildings under construction, where hundreds of workers would typically toil side by side. Following the outbreak of the X virus, many nearby workers opted to return home, leaving behind nearly 100 who resided farther away. Most of these laborers hailed from rural areas and were accustomed to frugality. When ill, they tended to merely purchase some medicine, believing it would suffice to endure and recover. The remaining workers never anticipated the ferocity of the X virus. As they witnessed their comrades transform into zombies, their rural innocence prevented them from contemplating the notion of harming their fellow workers. Even when scratched or bitten, their instinct was to assist their afflicted friends. This very mindset led to a cascade of mutual infections, culminating in the entire group succumbing to the zombie transformation. As Xiao Kai observed the approaching zombies, he brandished his machete and charged forth. The spacious environment of the construction site, teeming with zombies, provided the perfect opportunity for him to familiarize himself with his physical enhancements. Although the site was crowded with the undead, its complex landscape, filled with various construction equipment, served as obstacles against the zombies. Utilizing these barriers, he deftly maneuvered and dodged, perpetually circling the zombies to avoid being encircled himself. Should he detect a zombie attempting to flank him from behind, he would harness his newfound speed to break free. As he skillfully evaded and eliminated the undead, the number of zombies on the construction site dwindled. However, he soon realized that the remaining zombies appeared to be growing increasingly agile, as if they were adapting to their own bodies. The longer they moved, the more nimble they became. When only a few zombies remained, they had transformed to the point of exhibiting the agility of normal humans. Their speed restored to that of an ordinary person. He had intentionally left these last few zombies alive to observe the extent of their recovery. Once he confirmed that the zombies could only revert to a state akin to that of a typical human, he ceased to procrastinate. Utilizing the terrain to increase the distance between the zombies, he swiftly turned back to dispatch them one by one. Gazing at the scattered remains of the undead, he acknowledged that in his previous physical condition, such a feat would have been utterly impossible, even against the clumsy zombies. Being besieged by 70 or 80 of them would have exhausted him in a mere attempt to flee, let alone to slay them. Chapter 13. The Old City. After clearing the construction site of zombies, Xiao Kai hastened towards the old city located behind the site. The transformations he had witnessed among the zombies compelled him to rescue Wang Kursin without delay. As time passed, even the currently stiff zombies would become increasingly agile. It would not be long before they matched the agility of ordinary humans, and at that point, not even 10 or 100 of him could hope to save Wang Kursin. His current advantage lay in his considerable strength and remarkable speed. While the zombies still exhibited some stiffness in their movements, he believed that, with caution to avoid being encircled, he still had a chance to rescue Wang Kursin. The area where the construction site met the old city had been cleared of debris, revealing a vast expanse. Many dilapidated buildings had been reduced to rubble, and traversing this wasteland would lead him into the old city. He had ventured into the old city once before in search of a shortcut, but its labyrinthine streets were beyond the comprehension of those unfamiliar with the area. On that occasion, he had intended to cut through the old city, only to find himself taking a longer route than usual to reach his destination. Since then, he had not returned to the old city. The city of Linhai had long intended to demolish the old city and redevelop the area. However, the residents were predominantly elderly individuals who had lived there for decades. Despite numerous negotiations and even exorbitant offers from developers, the stubborn elderly refused to relocate. Thus, while the old city still existed, it was now home to a population of aging residents, as most young people had moved elsewhere. As Xiao Kai entered the old city, he tread carefully along the cobblestone streets, which were neither long nor straight, with every path meandering in unexpected directions. After walking a short distance, he found himself somewhat disoriented. Fortunately, the buildings in the old city were not particularly tall, and by spotting a distant skyscraper, he was able to vaguely ascertain his location. However, he was entirely unaware of the route to the hospital and could only orient himself in its general direction, proceeding onward in search of it. In comparison to the outside, the old district is indeed much quieter. Xiao Kai has been wandering for half an hour in this area without encountering a single zombie, suggesting that the old district has truly become desolate. It was not until he arrived at a dilapidated market that a few zombies began to emerge, all of whom were elderly individuals transformed into the undead after their demise, easily dispatched by his blade. Within this market, he discovered a small supermarket, the only one he had seen since entering the old district, while the rest were merely small shops selling daily necessities, with scant snacks available, as the elderly seldom indulged in such treats. Upon entering the supermarket, he was surprised to find a dozen zombies inside, some of whom had been young in their former lives, indicating that this solitary supermarket had been a favored shopping destination for the youth. Gazing at the array of snacks on the shelves, he lamented the thought of not being able to take any with him. The zombies roamed aimlessly, occasionally knocking various snacks to the ground, only for them to be trampled upon, stirring a sense of pity within him. As the zombies grew increasingly agile, the threat they posed escalated, and with the cessation of production, the scarcity of food would only worsen. The further time advanced, the more difficult it would become for the remaining survivors to procure sustenance. After some contemplation, he stood at the supermarket entrance and tapped the glass door with his machete. The sound attracted the zombies within, who turned and lunged toward him. As he retreated, he struck the ground with his weapon, drawing all the zombies out before he swung his blade at the foremost undead. The clumsy movements of the zombies posed no danger to Xiao Kai, and within mere minutes, he had felled them all. Once he confirmed that no other zombies lingered within the supermarket, he sought out a grain and oil shop in the market. After luring the few zombies inside out and dispatching them, he returned to the supermarket, filling his backpack with food, the items he could not carry. He decided to leave behind, reasoning that the old district rarely saw visitors, as long as he secured the door to prevent zombies from wreaking havoc. Perhaps they would prove useful someday. Having completed these tasks, he hastened towards the hospital. It was already afternoon, and he needed to locate the hospital before nightfall to devise a means to rescue Wang Kersen. However, the labyrinthine roads of the old district confounded him, leading him astray on several occasions, forcing him to retrace his steps. The longer he delayed, the greater the peril Wang Kersen faced. To save time, he opted to scale walls. The walls and buildings in the old district were generally low, and given his current agility, scaling them proved effortless. He dispatched a few wandering zombies he encountered along the way with ease. After vaulting over several walls, he found himself in a courtyard, where upon landing, he froze in shock. The yard was teeming with zombies, numbering at least 200 or 300. His sudden appearance immediately roused the undead within the courtyard. As he beheld dozens of zombies charging towards him, he realized he had no chance to escape the yard. He could only raise his machete and strike down a few of the approaching undead before retreating to a corner. The sheer number of zombies in the yard was overwhelming, and there were no obstacles to shield him. Although the zombies moved with a certain rigidity, upon landing, Xiao Kai found himself already encircled by them. Behind him loomed a wall, while the zombies around him surged closer, their grasp within reach. Scaling the wall was out of the question, though not particularly high. It stood over 2 meters. With his current capabilities, leaping to clear it was not impossible. However, the relentless tide of zombies offered him no opportunity to jump. The moment he dared to lower his machete, he would be engulfed. As the horde continued to swell, he managed to fell yet another zombie before those flanking him were upon him. Fortunately, his strength remained formidable, allowing him to kick down several zombies with a single blow. Yet, this was futile. Even if he could topple 10 zombies with one kick, others would swiftly take their place. He understood he had to break free immediately, or he would inevitably be torn apart by the relentless undead. As long as he could evade their encirclement, he was confident he could eliminate them all. When he lifted his foot to kick another zombie beside him, instead of retracting his leg, he pressed down with force, stomping on the fallen undead. Harnessing this momentum, he leapt towards the wall. Chapter 14. The retirement home. Xiao Kai's hands were almost at the top of the wall. With a strong push, he could escape the zombie horde. Yet, he suddenly felt a tug at the hem of his pants, pulling him downwards. Looking down, his face paled as he saw the zombie he had trampled grasping at his pant leg, while the surrounding zombies filled the space he had just vacated. At this moment, caught by the zombie's grip, he lost his chance to escape. Below him lay a mass of zombies, leaving no safe landing for him. The instant he fell, he would be overwhelmed. In a desperate bid, he severed the hand that clutched at his pants, and then pushed against the wall with his foot. The force from this action allowed him to ascend slightly, albeit precariously, while this maneuver temporarily freed him from the zombies below. The backward thrust also propelled him away from the wall. As he began to descend, exhausted, he managed to land a foot upon a zombie's head, and then, like a dragonfly skimming the water, he raced across the heads of the undead. He never imagined that one day he would find himself sprinting atop a horde of zombies. Akin to the legendary martial artists of yore, this agile movement was fraught with peril, for the slightest misstep could send him tumbling into the throng of zombies below. Fortunately, the zombies beneath him were oblivious to the need for evasion. He dashed forward, trampling over their heads until he finally broke free from their encirclement. Upon stepping decisively on the last zombie's skull, he landed smoothly on the ground. Yet, the sheer number of zombies in the courtyard was overwhelming. Even though he had escaped their immediate grasp, he was still trapped within the confines of the yard. Upon landing, he swiftly made his way toward a small 2-story building, its exterior proclaiming it to be a nursing home. In his hasty glance around the yard while escaping, he noted that the second floor of this building was the sole refuge devoid of zombies. Any other location would have ensnared him in a veritable sea of the undead. As he surveyed the pile of medical supplies in front of the 2-story structure, along with a dozen or so zombies clad in lab coats, he finally comprehended the source of the horde. Previously, while traversing the streets of the old town, he had encountered only a scant few zombies, even in the marketplace, where the total count barely surpassed 100. In stark contrast, the courtyard was teeming with the undead. It appeared that following the emergence of the X virus, a contingent of medical personnel had been dispatched to examine the elderly residents. The old town was predominantly inhabited by senior citizens, and the news of doctors arriving at the nursing home had naturally drawn them all together. As the X virus fully erupted, these doctors remained devoted to serving the elderly. Given the frail immunity of the aged, they were among the first to succumb and transform into zombies, and the doctors, trapped amidst the horde, were equally doomed. With utmost urgency, Xiao Kai reached the front of the small building. The staircase leading to the second floor was situated at the far right of the structure. After dispatching 2 zombies blocking his path with swift strikes of his blade, he kicked aside another lunging towards him and ascended the stairs. His intention was not merely to evade the zombies on the second floor, but to utilize the narrow confines of the staircase to limit the number of zombies that could leap upon him. As he paused midway up the staircase, he turned and executed a horizontal slash, decapitating a pursuing zombie. The headless creature stumbled, only to be toppled by the relentless advance of those behind it. With each swing of his blade, he cleaved through the heads of the zombies, their lifeless bodies cascading down the staircase, only to be trampled by those that followed. He fought his way upward, retreating while dispatching several zombies with each step. Suddenly, a cry of agony escaped Xiao Kai's lips. The overwhelming number of zombies proved to be too much. After cleaving off half the head of a zombie directly in front of him, his hand faltered momentarily, allowing another to grasp the back of his hand, leaving a long, crimson trail in its wake. Gazing at the bloodstain on his arm, a heavy sensation settled in his heart. Being clawed or bitten by a zombie meant certain transformation into one of them. However, what he did not anticipate was that his worries were only beginning. The bloodstain on his hand began to heal at a visible rate, accompanied by a peculiar tingling sensation. Yet aside from the mild itch, he felt no other discomfort. This revelation instantly transformed his anxiety into sheer elation. Previously, during his confrontations with the zombies, he had exercised utmost caution, maintaining a safe distance before wielding his blade, fearful of sustaining injuries. However, he now discovered that the harm inflicted by the zombies not only failed to infect him, but also healed rapidly, emboldening his attacks considerably. In the ensuing battle, he unleashed his full might without reservation, no longer fearing the risk of being scratched by the zombies. This newfound confidence accelerated his efficiency in dispatching them. And by the time he retreated to the end of the staircase, the steps were already littered with the corpses of the undead. The multitude of bodies hindered the advance of the remaining zombies, forcing them to clamber over the fallen in a laborious manner. He merely had to stand atop the stairs, waiting for the zombies to ascend, before delivering lethal blows to their heads. Once the last zombie fell, he, who had not rested since setting out, found himself slightly breathless. Seeking a clean spot, he sat down heavily on the ground, panting. This harrowing encounter made him acutely aware of his earlier complacency. He had presumed that a mere modicum of ability would allow him to slay zombies with ease and charge recklessly into danger. Yet, he realized that when faced with a horde of a certain magnitude, even if he could effortlessly vanquish 10 or 100, exhaustion would inevitably render him vulnerable to being overwhelmed by countless others. Had it not been for the staircase serving as a barrier and his lack of fear of infection, he would have either been torn apart by the zombies or become one of them. After catching his breath, Xiao Kai stood up. He had already squandered too much time and needed to hasten to the hospital. Casting a glance at the staircase strewn with corpses, he opted to leap directly from the second floor, finding that the courtyard was devoid of any remaining zombies. Upon reaching the exit on the other side of the nursing home, he, having learned his lesson, refrained from rushing out immediately. Instead, he first assessed the situation outside, and only then did he push open the courtyard gate, determined to avoid another encounter with a large group of zombies. Half an hour later, Xiao Kai stood atop a building, gazing across the road at the hospital. The area surrounding the hospital was densely packed with zombies, easily numbering in the thousands. And that was merely what was visible. The true count, including those lurking in unseen rooms, was likely far greater. Moreover, he observed that several zombies had regained movements akin to those of normal humans. With such a multitude of zombies, coupled with those exhibiting restored mobility, rescuing Wang Kersen amidst this overwhelming horde seemed utterly impossible. Chapter 15. Do not approach inside the hospital. Wang Kersen glared furiously at Lu Gu before her. Director Lu, what do you intend to do? What do you think I intend? Lu Gu replied with a lecherous grin, his gaze lingering on Wang Kersen's alluring figure. Behind him stood 2 others, their eyes similarly filled with desire. Director Lu, do not go too far. Your actions are illegal. Upon hearing Lu Ji's words, Wang Kersen's heart tightened. Lu Gu was notorious for his lecherous behavior within the hospital, though he had previously managed to restrain himself. Ostensibly, he would merely seek verbal favors from the nurses, yet he maintained ambiguous relationships with several patients and nurses behind the scenes. Despite repeated admonitions from the hospital regarding his conduct as a chief physician, he continued to act with impunity, relying on his exceptional medical skills to escape serious repercussions. After Wang Kersen joined the hospital, Lu Gu exploited his authority to transfer her to his department, where he frequently harassed her, only to be met with her firm refusals. This time, apart from Wang Kersen and her 2 assistants, there were no other souls present. Initially trapped, they all hoped for rescue, and Lu Gu, cautious not to overstep, refrained from crossing certain boundaries. However, as 3 days passed without any sign of rescuers and the number of zombies outside grew, they became painfully aware of the grim reality that they might perish in this place. Having long coveted Wang Kersen, Lu Gu began to verbally taunt her from the early hours of the day, escalating to physical advances by the afternoon. With their energy waning after 3 days of subsisting on the scant glucose supplies available, Lu Ji's impatience grew. Convinced they were destined to die, he resolved to seize one last moment of pleasure before their demise. He code just as Wang Kersen was poised to draw her scalpel and strike at one of the individuals. A sudden and distant cacophony of gunfire echoed from outside. The sound of gunshots rendered everyone in the room momentarily frozen, and almost instinctively, several rushed to the windows. Peering outside, they could not discern the origin of the gunfire. Yet the rapid succession of shots became increasingly distinct. It was not until a series of resounding explosions sent plumes of black smoke rising in the distance that they concluded the gunfire emanated from several kilometers away at the highway entrance. As the gunfire and explosions erupted, the previously tranquil zombies in the vicinity of the hospital began to roar and surge towards the source of the noise, with more zombies spilling out from within the hospital's walls. "Director Liu, what shall we do now? Should we proceed with her?" one of the two assistants inquired. Glancing at Wang Kersen, who was separated from them by a window, Lu Gu furrowed his brow as he gazed at the thick smoke in the distance. Then turned to Wang Kersen and spoke in a low, resolute tone. "Yes, why not? Even if the military comes to our rescue, they won't arrive here immediately. We must deal with her first and then dispose of her from the upper floor. If we remain silent, who would ever suspect us? On the contrary, if we hesitate now and the military arrives, do you think she won't expose us? We would then be left with no escape." The two assistants star upon hearing Lu Ji's insidious words. The two assistants exchanged a glance before simultaneously directing their gaze towards Wang Kersen. Unable to resist the allure of her exquisite figure and breathtaking beauty, they swallowed hard and resolutely approached her. "Do not come any closer," Wang Kersen exclaimed in alarm, brandishing a scalpel and waving it erratically at the approaching duo. Chapter 16. Curse you. Standing atop the rooftop of the old district, Xiao Kai also heard the gunfire ringing out. As he observed the zombies being drawn away, he began to scrutinize the hospital building, searching for the most likely hiding place of Wang Kersen, when he spotted her silhouette at a window on the 5th floor alongside Lu Gu and the two assistants. His heart soared with relief upon confirming her safety. However, a sense of foreboding washed over him as he recognized one of the individuals as Director Liu, whom Wang Kersen had previously mentioned during her moments of distress after being harassed multiple times by Lu Gu. Xiao Kai had once visited the hospital to confront Lu Gu, warning him as Wang Kersen's boyfriend, which had tempered Lu Ji's advances somewhat. Yet, the current situation, with Wang Kersen trapped alongside Lu Gu, could surely not bode well. Indeed, it was not long before he witnessed Wang Kersen seemingly embroiled in a dispute with them, as two of them advanced toward her, who was brandishing the gleaming scalpel. Even from several hundred meters away, although he was certain that being scratched by a zombie would not lead to infection and transformation into one, a bite constituted a different peril. The viral load in a zombie's mouth was undoubtedly different from that on its claws, and he dared not take such a risk. By the time he ascended to the 2nd floor, he was nearly drenched in blood, having suffered several scratches from the undead, and on more than one occasion. He narrowly escaped being bitten. If it were not for the significant increase in his strength, he would have been unable to free himself from the grasp of 2 or 3 zombies simultaneously. He fought his way up the staircase, knowing that the 2nd and 3rd floors were teeming with zombies. In his haste to reach the 5th floor where Wang Kersen was located, Xiao Kai toppled a small triage desk, blocking the staircase leading from the 2nd to the 3rd floor. Ignoring the zombies behind him, he quickened his pace, employing the same tactic on the subsequent 2 floors to obstruct the ascent. After what felt like an eternity, he finally reached the 5th floor. But over a dozen minutes had slipped away, time enough for countless events to unfold. Anxiously, he rushed toward Wang Kersen's room, scarcely pausing to confront the zombies he encountered along the way. Mere meters from the door, he heard her gasp of alarm and saw several zombies clawing at the door. His heart raced with urgency, and a fierce determination surged within him. "Die!" he roared as the assistant Lu Gu, who had been ruthlessly slain by a single blow, lay sprawled on the ground, his warm blood pooling around him. Drawn by the metallic scent of blood, the horde of zombies that burst in instinctively surged toward Xiao Kai. Lu Gu and his assistant, their faces ashen, watched in horror as Xiao Kai fought valiantly against the encroaching undead, severing heads and watching them tumble lifelessly to the floor. They trembled in fear, never imagining that someone would dare to intrude at such a perilous moment, let alone execute one of their own so swiftly and without hesitation. As they observed the blood-soaked Xiao Kai engaging with the zombies, a part of them secretly hoped he would be overwhelmed, that he would join the body on the floor and the motionless Wang Kursin, thus buying them precious moments to escape. However, fate had other plans. The number of zombies dwindled, and Xiao Kai grew increasingly at ease, occasionally casting a glance at Lu Gu, his eyes glinting with unmistakable malice that sent shivers down Lu Ji's spine. Finally, as the last of the zombies fell, the entrance lay devoid of further threats. After wiping his bloodied blade on the fallen corpses, Xiao Kai turned his attention to Lu Gu. Chapter 17. I'm sorry for arriving late. Xiao Kai glanced back at Lu Gu before moving to Wang Kursin's side. He removed his jacket and draped it over her, softly calling out, "Snail, wake up." The motionless Wang Kursin, upon hearing the familiar voice, slowly opened her eyes. Despite Xiao Kai's face being marred by grime and blood, she recognized him instantly. Overwhelmed with emotion, Wang Kursin reached out, wrapping her arms around Xiao Kai's neck. The pent-up feelings of grievance and humiliation erupted into tears, soaking his collar with her sorrow. "I'm sorry for arriving late. Don't worry. I will ensure they pay for this. Please, stop crying." Xiao Kai gently patted her back, a wave of dread washing over him. Had he arrived even a moment later, he could scarcely bear to imagine the horrors Wang Kursin might have faced. Glancing up at Lu Gu, the murderous intent in his eyes left no room for doubt. Had Wang Kursin not been clinging to him, Lu Gu would have already been dismembered by his blood-stained blade. "Snail, if you keep crying, you'll attract the zombies. And that scoundrel will escape." Seeing Wang Kursin gasping for breath through her sobs, Xiao Kai felt a sense of helplessness and resorted to threats. Indeed, upon hearing his words, she stifled her cries, her sobs reduced to soft whimpers. Though he appeared to be frightening Wang Kursin, he was simultaneously alerting Lu Gu that, for the moment, he could not act against him due to her embrace, and with the absence of zombies outside, it was the perfect opportunity for Lu Gu to flee. Prompted by Xiao Kai's words, Lu Gu ceased his hesitation and bolted towards the door, his assistant hastily following suit. "Xiao Kai, they are escaping." Embracing Xiao Kai, Wang Kursin noticed Lu Gu rushing outside, and she promptly released her hold on him, pointing towards the doorway. As she lifted her hand, the coat draped over her slipped down, revealing a generous expanse of her fair skin before Xiao Kai's eyes. Both were momentarily taken aback, prompting Xiao Kai to hurriedly turn his back to her. Wang Kursin's face flushed crimson, completely overshadowing the handprint on her cheek, wishing fervently to disappear into the ground. Stealing a glance at Xiao Kai's back, she scrambled to retrieve her coat from the floor and put it on. "It's all right, they can't escape," Xiao Kai awkwardly remarked, discreetly wiping away the blood trickling from his nose as he listened to the rustling sound of her getting dressed behind him. Outside, apart from the zombies on the 5th floor, each level below was swarming with them at the stairwell, making it a daunting task for him to descend. Once Wang Kursin was properly dressed, Xiao Kai stepped forward to exit, only for her to instinctively grasp the hem of his shirt as she noticed the throng of zombies lying at the entrance. He initially assumed her grip was born from fear, but to his surprise, when he turned to look, he found Wang Kursin had already followed in his footsteps. Stepping over the first corpse on the ground, aside from her slightly pale complexion, she displayed no overt signs of trepidation. Little did he know that those who study medicine often encounter corpses during their education and must become accustomed to the cycles of life and death in hospitals. Otherwise, how could they endure working in an environment where death is a frequent occurrence? To them, corpses are a common sight. However, the sheer number of grotesque undead still unnerved Wang Kursin. As soon as they stepped outside, they heard a series of anguished screams emanating from the stairwell. "See, I told you they wouldn't escape. Just wait and see how I take care of this," he said, glancing towards the staircase before turning to smile at Wang Kursin. She grasped his shirt, reminiscent of her childhood when she would cling to him for protection whenever she was bullied, and he would lead her to seek retribution. Now, however, they had grown up, yet in the face of danger, Xiao Kai still stood before her, ready to confront those who had wronged her. His not particularly broad back still exuded a profound sense of security. Upon reaching the stairwell, they witnessed Lu Gu and his assistant desperately battling the zombies with makeshift batons they had acquired from somewhere. Positioned at the 4th floor exit, they struck vigorously at the advancing undead. Upon seeing Xiao Kai appear on the staircase, they redoubled their efforts. Yet, they had evidently forgotten the zombies' vulnerabilities. Their frenzied assault failed to eliminate any of the creatures, and instead resulted in an increasing number of zombies gathering at the exit. Although the zombies were not yet capable of climbing over obstacles, the relentless pressure from the horde caused several to spill over the triage desk. Realizing the dire situation, Lu Gu, in utter fright, hastily retreated to the 5th floor. Halfway up his retreat, he froze at the sight of Xiao Kai standing there with a machete in hand, staring at him with a murderous glare. Too terrified to climb further back, yet the zombies downstairs were closing in fast. He had no choice but to keep retreating up the stairs. "You can't kill me. Murder is illegal," Haven't you heard the gunshots outside? We'll be rescued soon. I'll give you money. Name your price. Just let me go, all right? Lu Gu shouted as he inched backward up the steps. He was only a few steps away from the upper floor, but Xiao Kai still blocked his path. Lu Gu dared not charge forward recklessly. He and his assistant could only stand their ground, struggling desperately to fend off the few zombies forcing their way onto the staircase. A sudden scream tore from his assistant's throat. Lu Gu turned his head and watched in horror as a zombie latched onto the man's leg, its blood-soaked mouth tearing into his flesh ferociously. As if he had expected this all along, Xiao Kai shot Lu Gu a mocking glance. Seeing his assistant bitten, Lu Gu no longer dared to stay put. He glanced at Xiao Kai blocking the stairs, then gritted his teeth and charged upward. He would rather die quickly by Xiao Kai's blade than be torn apart slowly by the zombies. Watching Lu Gu rush toward him, Xiao Kai curled into an evil smirk and stepped back 2 paces to clear the stairway. Lu Gu never expected him to move aside. Thinking his words had intimidated Xiao Kai, he rushed elatedly up to the 5th floor. But the moment he steadied himself, Xiao Kai swung his machete without warning, slashing hard into Lu Gu's knee. Lu Gu let out a shrill scream and collapsed to the ground, staring at Xiao Kai in utter terror. Unable to understand why he would do this, Xiao Kai paid no mind to the crumpled man. He merely watched the assistant on the stairs, who eventually perished amid agonizing screams as the zombies mauled him. Only then did Xiao Kai walk down and eliminate the undead. Returning to the 5th floor, he knelt down before Lu Gu and said calmly, "I warned you. If you dared lay a hand on her, I'd cut off your hands. Did you think I was joking?" Chapter 18. A man keeps his word, brother. Spare me. I know I was wrong. Lu Gu sat clutching his mangled knee, begging in terror. He never imagined Xiao Kai would strike so brutally. The blade had shattered his kneecap. He could not even stand now. If you know you're wrong, you must pay the price. A man keeps his word. With that, Xiao Kai grabbed Lu Gu's wrist, pinned it firmly to the ground, and raised his machete. Without a flicker of hesitation, he brought the blade down. Lu Gu thrashed wildly, trying to break free, but Xiao Kai's strength was far too overwhelming. A blood-curdling scream rang out, leaving a severed palm lying on the floor. Lu Gu clutched his bleeding wrist, rolling on the ground in agony. "I said I'd cut off your hand, and I keep my promise. Now you're free to leave." Xiao Kai stood up, glanced indifferently at Lu Gu, and said coldly. Hearing Xiao Kai's words, Lu Gu bit back his agony and stopped screaming. Drenched in cold sweat, he tried to push himself up from the ground, but his shattered kneecap left him unable to stand at all. Helpless on the ground, he glared at Xiao Kai with bitter resentment. He swore that once the rescuers arrived, he would report Xiao Kai as murder to them. After Xiao Kai was arrested, he would never let Wang Kexing off easily. For now, he needed to tend his wounds and wait quietly for help to come. With that thought, Lu Gu began dragging his injured leg toward the infirmary. He had only crawled a short distance when he saw Xiao Kai blocking his path, staring down at him with a mocking look. "What exactly do you want?" Lu Gu ground his teeth and snapped at Xiao Kai. "I want nothing. The entire 5th floor is my territory now. You can go anywhere else except here." Xiao Kai flicked the blood off his machete, glancing toward the stairway behind Lu Gu. His meaning clear: get down to the 4th floor. Just kill me if you want. Is it fun playing with me like this? Even dim-witted as he was, Lu Gu finally understood. Xiao Kai had never intended to let him live. "Killing trash like you would dirty my hands. Will you walk down by yourself, or shall I send you?" He had never planned to spare Lu Gu from the start. If he hadn't arrived in time, Wang Kexing would have been ruined by him. A quick death by the blade would be far too merciful. Only letting him die at the hands of the zombies could ease his rage. Xiao Kai took slow steps toward him, intimidated by his menacing aura. Lu Gu scrambled backward nonstop. He wanted to beg for mercy, but pinned under Xiao Kai's killing gaze, he knew nothing he said would help. Eventually, Lu Gu backed right up to the stairwell, with the zombie-infested steps directly behind him. He completely broke down, dropped to his knees, and kowtowed frantically. "Spare me. Please spare me. I don't want to die. Kexing, I know I was wrong. Please speak up for me. Beg him to let me live. I'm begging you." Tears streamed down his face as he pleaded desperately to Wang Kexing. Only now did he feel true regret and terror. Xiao Kai's cruelty made him realize how gravely he had erred. Wang Kexing had watched the whole scene coldly from the very beginning. She harbored even more hatred for Lu Gu than Xiao Kai. If she hadn't known Xiao Kai would not let her take matters into her own hands, she would have killed Lu Gu herself. There was no way she would plead for him now. Xiao Kai had originally planned to force Lu Gu to crawl down the stairs on his own. But when he heard Lu Kai daring to call out to Wang Kexing for mercy, his anger flared instantly. "Go to hell." Xiao Kai kicked Lu Gu hard in the chest, sending him tumbling straight down from the 5th floor to the 4th, landing right amid the horde of zombies at the stairwell entrance. The undead swarmed over him in an instant, lying trapped among the zombies. Lu Gu felt like a tattered rag, grabbed and torn by countless hands. Every part of his body was savagely mauled. His throat was torn open. robbing him even of the right to scream. From a distance, Wang Kursin, who had been standing apart, now approached slowly, joining Xiao Kai on the staircase as they gazed below at Lu Go, who was gradually being torn apart by the zombies. Am I too cold-hearted? With Lu Ji's demise, the resentment that had filled Xiao Kai's heart dissipated, prompting him to reflect on his recent actions. He suddenly wondered if he might be excessively ruthless, questioning whether his act of taking 2 lives made him a bloodthirsty individual. Such a person would deserve their fate, even if spared today. They would harbor only thoughts of vengeance. Understanding Xiao Kai's internal struggle, Wang Kursin remained resolute in her belief that, regardless of his actions, he would always be the protector who stood before her in any situation. Xiao Kai offered Wang Kursin a faint smile. He cherished the way she appeared when he shielded her, exuding a feminine charm. In a buoyant mood, he stretched his neck and stepped down the stairs, intending to clear the zombies below before escorting Wang Kursin out of the hospital. Hey, where are you going? She inquired. To slay the zombies, of course. How else can we get down? Xiao Kai replied, bewildered by her call to halt. Could you use your brain a little? How long do you intend to keep killing zombies? The hospital isn't just one path. Follow me. Wang Kursin gave Xiao Kai a look of exasperation before turning to walk down the corridor. Seeing her current demeanor, Xiao Kai felt a dull ache in his head. He couldn't quite pinpoint when it had begun, but the little girl he had always protected was now taking charge of him, forbidding any form of dissent. Watching Wang Kursin walk further away, he sighed in resignation and picked up his machete to follow her. Wishing he could express that clearing these few zombies wouldn't take long, Wang Kursin first led Xiao Kai back to the room where she had previously hidden. After locating a medical kit, she rummaged through some boxes to gather supplies to fill it. Once the kit was brimming, they shared some of the food Xiao Kai had brought before emerging from the room. The medical supplies and equipment had been urgently transported days earlier, temporarily stored here due to space constraints. Had it not been for the several boxes of glucose among these supplies, Wang Kursin might not have endured until Xiao Kai arrived to rescue her. After exiting the room, Wang Kursin guided Xiao Kai to the end of the corridor and pointed to a metal door, saying, "This is an old staircase. Since the hospital was renovated a few years ago, no one uses it anymore for safety reasons. It has been preserved solely as an emergency exit. Descending from here will lead directly to the first floor, where there shouldn't be any zombies." As she spoke, Wang Kursin grasped the doorknob, preparing to push it open. Xiao Kai's eyelids twitched in apprehension. He dashed forward, pulling Wang Kursin behind him. Though it is unlikely that there would be any zombies within, one cannot dismiss the possibility of a sudden emergence of one, leaving him little time to rescue anyone. After casting a sharp glance at Wang Kursin, Xiao Kai grasped the handle of the old iron door and gently pushed it open. The corridor was eerily silent, devoid of any sound, confirming the absence of zombies. Chapter 19. What is evolution? The dilapidated staircase was narrow and dimly lit, barely accommodating 2 individuals side by side, which elucidated the necessity for the hospital's renovation. Dust and cobwebs adorned every corner, a clear indication that no one had traversed this path in quite some time. Xiao Kai and Wang Kursin descended the staircase, encountering no zombies along the way, and they successfully reached the ground floor, where the exit was yet another aged iron door. Xiao Kai cautiously opened a crack to peer outside. The gunfire had lessened in intensity as the zombies congregated around the source of the noise. The exterior had transformed into a desolate scene, littered with dismembered corpses, confirming that for the moment, it was safe outside. Xiao Kai pushed the door open and, taking Wang Kursin by the hand, sprinted towards the old city district. Where are we going? Aren't we waiting for rescue? Wang Kursin, pulled along by Xiao Kai, glanced towards the direction of the gunfire. She had assumed that Xiao Kai would wait for the rescue team downstairs, but to her surprise, he had opened the door and dashed out. Don't be naive. No rescue team is coming, at least not today. His eyes continuously scanned the surroundings, wary of any zombies that might suddenly emerge from the hospital. However, they were situated a fair distance from the main entrance, and the zombies inside had yet to notice them. How can you be so sure? The gunfire has been ongoing for over an hour. They might arrive any moment. Wang Kursin found it hard to accept Xiao Kai's unwavering assertion. Alas, there are at least hundreds of thousands of zombies in Linhai City. Once they started firing, the zombies flocked to the noise. Have you not noticed how the gunfire has diminished significantly? Either the casualties are severe, or their ammunition is running low. It's a miracle they can defend themselves, let alone have the energy to rescue us. Slowing his pace, Xiao Kai elaborated to Wang Kursin, frowning as he glanced towards the direction of the gunfire. He knew a military unit was stationed near Linhai City, but the number of personnel was surely limited. Considering the casualties inflicted by the viral outbreak, it was uncertain how many would remain. They would be launching an offensive against the zombies in Linhai City at this juncture. Likely realizing that the zombies were becoming increasingly agile, the longer they delayed, the more challenging the rescue would become. Yet they underestimated the sheer volume of zombies present in Linhai City. These zombies were not easily vanquished, aside from their heads. Bullets were ineffective against other parts of their bodies. Even if the soldiers were sharpshooters capable of headshots, it would be impossible to eradicate hundreds of thousands of zombies. Should they become encircled, they would undoubtedly meet a gruesome end. It appears that Xiao Kai's words have been tacitly accepted, as Wang Kursin remained silent throughout their journey. After Xiao Kai guided her into the old town, they meandered through its winding paths, occasionally stopping to find their way. Where are we headed? It's nearly dark. You wouldn't happen to be lost, would you? Wang Kursin, who had not eaten much in the past few days, felt weak from hunger as Xiao Kai pulled her around aimlessly. Unable to restrain herself any longer, she finally inquired. We're looking for the market. I collected a good amount of food there. I distinctly remember it being nearby, yet we can't seem to locate it, Xiao Kai replied with a hint of embarrassment. Oh dear, follow me, Wang Kursin said, casting a disapproving glance at Xiao Kai before turning into a narrow alley. 10 minutes later, both stood at the entrance of the market. How come you're so familiar with this place? Xiao Kai asked, astonished as he gazed at the market. We come here every month to check on the elderly residents. With frequent visits, one naturally becomes acquainted with the surroundings, Wang Kursin replied proudly. Leading the way into the market. With his medical kit slung over his shoulder, Xiao Kai followed closely behind. Reassured by the knowledge that he had cleared the area of zombies, their immediate concern was to find a suitable place to rest within the market. They discovered a 2-story building with a yard near the market, and after prying open the lock, they settled inside. Once the iron gate to the yard was secured, even zombies would be unable to enter. As darkness fell, candles illuminated the room, where the two sat at a table enjoying a simple meal prepared from fresh ingredients sourced from the market, which made the process quite convenient. Thank you. If it weren't for you today, I truly wouldn't know what I would have done, Wang Kursin said earnestly, looking across the table at Xiao Kai. Given the nature of our relationship, expressing thanks feels somewhat unnecessary, Xiao Kai replied with a gentle smile. By the way, how did you become so formidable? You encountered so many zombies along the way. How did you manage to get through? Wang Kursin asked curiously, having witnessed Xiao Kai's prowess in dispatching zombies at the hospital, where even the most terrifying of creatures fell before him like ripe fruit. She found it hard to fathom how he traversed the perilous path from his home to the hospital, especially considering the sheer number of zombies that must have been present. Setting down his bowl and chopsticks, Xiao Kai contemplated for a moment before recounting in detail the events he encountered after waking with a high fever. He knew Wang Kursin was studying medicine and hoped she could help him understand the peculiarities of his condition. As she listened attentively while eating, Wang Kursin's brow furrowed deeper with each detail. Once Xiao Kai finished, she also set down her utensils and looked at him intently. You must have evolved. Evolved? What do you mean by that? Xiao Kai asked, taken aback and puzzled by Wang Kursin's statement. When I was in university, a professor once told me that all living beings in our world are constantly evolving. The evolution in question is often so minuscule that it escapes our notice. However, there are instances wherein specific factors yield conspicuous evolutionary changes. For instance, individuals who are blind may possess an extraordinary sensitivity in their auditory faculties, while those who have lost their hands may find their legs exhibiting enhanced agility. These phenomena are, indeed, products of evolution, although some might argue they are merely the results of rigorous training. Moreover, there are those who, from the moment of birth, exhibit capabilities that far surpass those of the average person. Some possess olfactory senses more acute than those of dogs, while others are endowed with remarkable strength. Such traits are manifestations of our biological evolution. To initiate evolution, one must first unlock the genetic codes within our bodies. However, the concept of genetic locks remains largely theoretical, with no one truly understanding how they are formed or how to unfasten them. As for the changes in your body, I can only speculate on their origins. It is plausible that they are linked to the crystal core you consumed. If that is indeed the case, referring to it as an evolutionary crystal core would not be an exaggeration. Wang Kursin regarded Xiao Kai with a flicker of concern in her eyes, uncertain whether his condition was beneficial or detrimental, and resolved to observe him closely in the days to come. Chapter 20. I have become an evolver. Are you implying that my body has evolved? Does this mean I could become a superhero in the future? Xiao Kai's excitement was palpable as he gazed at Wang Kursin, bouncing energetically as if he wished to take flight like a superhero. Hey, shouldn't you be more concerned about your health? Do you realize that genetic evolution can be perilous? There are numerous uncontrollable factors associated with genetic changes. Transforming into a monster is not out of the realm of possibility, and in severe cases, it could even pose a threat to your life, Wang Kursin remarked, exasperated by Xiao Kai's obliviousness to the dangers of genetic evolution. It's not that serious. I feel perfectly fine as I am. If you believe my evolution is due to the evolutionary crystal core, do you think that if I consume more of it, I might become even more formidable? Xiao Kai mused, resuming his seat while stroking his chin thoughtfully. How would I know? I haven't even seen what an evolutionary crystal core looks like, Wang Kersen retorted, casting him a disapproving glance while her mind wandered to the origins of the evolutionary crystal cores. Upon hearing Wang Kersen's words, Xiao Kai lowered his head in contemplation, pondering how he might procure more evolutionary crystal cores. Although the one he had ingested was sourced from an evolved rat, he surmised that other animals might possess them as well, and perhaps even the brains of zombies could contain such cores. However, the thought of those evolved rats, with their enlarged forms and swiftness, made them far more formidable than zombies. If other animals were to evolve and increase in size, he would find himself at a distinct disadvantage. Some larger species, such as common cats and dogs, or even livestock, could pose significant challenges should they undergo such transformations. Especially for creatures as formidable as elephants, one can only imagine that if they were to grow several times larger, a mere stomp could easily obliterate them. He certainly did not harbor the illusion that he could contend with such power. His own capabilities felt woefully inadequate. He must enhance his strength, for should he encounter other evolved beings, he would be unable to escape without the means to defend himself. Contemplating these thoughts, he resolved to venture out at dawn, intending to scour the remains of the fallen zombies for any signs of evolution crystals. If fortune did not favor him there, he would resort to hunting a few nests of rats instead. As for the potential harm to his body from evolution, as mentioned by Wang Kersen, he chose to disregard it for the moment, feeling no discomfort at present. After their meal, the two tidied up and found a room to rest. Wang Kersen, having not had a proper night's sleep for several days, succumbed to fatigue and quickly fell into slumber upon her bed. At the break of dawn, Xiao Kai stepped out into the courtyard and made his way to the market, where numerous zombie corpses lay. After a night's passing, these bodies had begun to decay, many bearing marks of having been gnawed upon by animals. From the traces left behind, he could not discern what creatures had feasted on the remains, but their size was likely not smaller than the 3 rats he had previously encountered. Overcoming the foul stench, he methodically severed the heads of all the zombie corpses in the market, searching in vain for anything resembling an evolution crystal. He then proceeded to the nursing home. Yet there too he found no crystals. Standing amidst the scattered corpses, he noticed that most of the zombies here were elderly, mirroring the demographic in the market. He began to suspect that the formation of crystals might be linked to physical vitality. Determined, he decided to inspect the construction site one last time, where dozens of zombies had been slain. Navigating back to the site, he had to scale several walls due to his unfamiliarity with the route. Upon arrival, he found fewer zombies, yet they were all robust workers in life. He again commenced the grim task of opening their skulls, but with each search, his heart sank further. He began to doubt whether crystals could even form within the brains of zombies. Just as hope began to dwindle, a dark red crystal, roughly the size of his thumb, materialized before his eyes. Had he not feared attracting the attention of nearby zombies, he might have let out a cheer. Holding the crystal, he marveled at the fact that his morning's efforts had not been in vain. After carefully securing the crystal, he turned his attention to the surrounding zombie corpses, seeking to discern what made this particular one different. Externally, it appeared unremarkable, yet he recalled this zombie was among the last to be dispatched, having regained a semblance of agility. With this realization, he hurried. He is now fairly certain that these crystal cores can only be produced by zombies that have regained their agility, and their age prior to death cannot be too advanced. He is eager to seek out a few zombies to validate his hypothesis, yet as he glances at the time, he realizes it is nearly noon. Concerned that Wang Kersen might worry if he returns too late, he ultimately decides to head back for a moment. Upon awakening, Wang Kersen feels invigorated. Although she is not in her own home, the knowledge that Xiao Kai is within the same building brings her a profound sense of comfort. Her slumber was particularly deep, and all her worries, fears, and negative emotions from the past few days dissipated upon waking. However, she is slightly anxious to discover that Xiao Kai is not present. Her concern is not that he would abandon her, but rather for his safety. Fortunately, her unease does not linger for long. As she prepares lunch, Xiao Kai bursts into the courtyard, excitement radiating from him, carrying a bundle on his back. Before he can set down his belongings, Wang Kersen appears before him, her face etched with worry. "Where have you been so early in the morning?" she asks, her concern palpable. In the past, she would not have worried about Xiao Kai, but the current circumstances are drastically different. The streets are rife with terrifying zombies, posing a constant threat to life. Having fretted all morning over Xiao Kai's absence, seeing him now brimming with joy ignites a flicker of irritation within her. "By the way, I noticed your clothes are torn, so I went out to find you a few outfits," she says, observing his disheartened expression as he retrieves a few slightly outdated women's garments from his bag. At this moment, he dares not reveal the crystal cores, fearing it would surely provoke her ire. Thankfully, he managed to locate a clothing store on his way back. Otherwise, he would have found it challenging to placate Wang Kursen. However, most shops in this old district cater to the elderly, and even the clothing store offered styles that were rather antiquated. As Xiao Kai produces the clothes from his bag, Wang Kursen glances down at her own jacket, stained with blood, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. She had slept in Xiao Kai's coat the previous night. After shooting him an admonishing look, she snatches the garments from his hands and retreats into the bathroom, where the sound of running water soon follows. Hearing the water flow from the bathroom, Xiao Kai searches for a cloth within the room and takes out the crystal cores from his backpack, carefully wiping off the bloodstains. Once cleaned, he examines them closely and notices that these cores appear somewhat different from the evolution core he had previously consumed. Firstly, their color lacks the vibrant red hue, instead appearing rather dull, and their transparency does not possess the smooth, crystalline quality of the former. To distinguish between the two types of cores, he decides to refer to the ones extracted from the zombies' brains as zombie crystal cores, while those taken from the evolved rats will be termed evolution crystal cores. As he contemplated cracking open one of the crystals to discern whether the liquid within possessed an unusual aroma, the sound of the bathroom door interrupted his thoughts. In a hurried motion, he seized the zombie crystal core from the table and tucked it back into his bag. "What are you doing?" Wang Kursen inquired, emerging from the bathroom while drying her hair. Upon noticing Xiao Kai seated at the table, her curiosity was piqued. "Nothing at all," Xiao Kai replied, turning to face her. He beheld Wang Kursen, freshly bathed and adorned in the garments he had brought back, clothes that, though once deemed outdated and intended for the elderly, now bestowed upon her an unexpected charm. She resembled a neighborly girl from decades past, with her skin, freshly washed and flushed, glistening with droplets of water that had yet to dry. Her rosy cheeks and dark, gem-like eyes rendered her a vision surpassing even that of a comic book heroine, leaving Xiao Kai momentarily spellbound. "Have you finished staring?" Wang Kursen, feeling the heat rise to her cheeks under his unwavering gaze, shyly remarked. I should go wash up as well," he stammered, jolted back to reality by her teasing tone. With an air of awkwardness, he grabbed a set of clothes and hurried into the bathroom. Feigning composure as he entered, Wang Kursen chuckled softly, placing a hand over her racing heart, delighting in the moment. Within the bathroom, Xiao Kai, hearing her melodious laughter, felt his face flush with embarrassment. Although they had known each other since childhood, he had never before perceived Wang Kursen as stunning as she appeared today. Shaking his head, he stood beneath the shower, letting the cold water wash away the heat that enveloped him. Once he had bathed and donned his new attire, he gazed at his reflection in the mirror, momentarily questioning his existence. The striped t-shirt paired with the old-fashioned trousers had transformed him from a youthful man in his 20s into a middle-aged uncle. Sighing, he opened the bathroom door and stepped out, only to find Wang Kursen seated at the table, her expression revealing her discontent as she regarded the zombie crystal cores he had collected. "Explain these to me," she demanded, her countenance cold as she met his gaze. "Oh, this is what I meant by crystal cores, but these are zombie cores, which I collected from those outside," he replied with an awkward smile, glancing around nervously. He couldn't fathom why, despite being older and having always protected her, he felt a sense of trepidation whenever he witnessed her anger. "You picked these up? Do you take me for a fool? Go collect a few more and show me what the outside is like. Are you truly under the impression that you are some sort of superhero, capable of navigating through hordes of zombies? If something were to happen to you, what would I do?" Wang Kursen's frustration escalated. She had spent the entire morning worrying about Xiao Kai's reckless ventures, and now he had audaciously dared to extract cores from the brains of zombies. As she spoke, tears glimmered in her eyes, reflecting her genuine fear for Xiao Kai's safety. She had come to regard him as her only family. "Please, don't be anxious. Let us discuss this calmly, and try not to cry," Xiao Kai urged. Noticing the tears in Wang Kursen's eyes, feeling a wave of guilt wash over him. He had never realized how much she valued him. "Humph. Then confess honestly. Where have you been?" Wang Kursen said, wiping her eyes and gazing at him. Xiao Kai scratched the back of his head, stepping back a few paces before responding. "Didn't you mention that my evolution might be linked to the evolution crystal cores, and that these cores could possibly be found in a zombie's brain? Naturally, I had to verify that. After slaying so many zombies yesterday, if I didn't check, and there truly was an evolution crystal core in a zombie's head, I would have suffered a great loss." As he spoke, he walked to the other side of the table and tossed a zombie crystal core into the air. "This is the evolution crystal core you referred to." Wang Kursen looked at him with curiosity, picking one up to examine closely. "Is it, or isn't it?" Xiao Kai frowned at the crystal core in his hand, relaying his findings to Wang Kursen. After listening, she set down the crystal core, contemplated for a moment, then looked up earnestly. "If that is the case, we can at least ascertain two things. First, the crystal core must be produced by a zombie that has regained its agility, and it cannot be too old. Second, the evolution crystal cores in animals differ from those found in zombies. With her medical background, Wang Kersen quickly grasped the essence of Xiao Kai's words and synthesized an analysis that he, despite his knowledge, struggled to articulate so clearly. Then does that mean I should? Don't even think about it, Wang Kersen interjected, knowing he was likely considering venturing out to find zombies and validate their earlier conclusions. Observing Xiao Kai's frustrated expression, she mischievously smiled and said, "If you want to hunt zombies, it's permissible, but you must take me along." Before Xiao Kai could express his joy at her initial statement, her follow-up left him speechless. "You are aware of the current situation. The outbreak of the X virus has brought about zombies and even evolved beasts, which are not problems that can be resolved swiftly. Even more frightening is human nature. In this apocalypse, the law no longer holds any sway, and desperate individuals might resort to anything. You cannot be with me at all times. If I lack even the slightest ability to protect myself, what will happen if one day you are not around and I encounter danger? Shall I simply be at the mercy of others?" Chapter 22. Don't come any closer. I can handle this. Upon hearing Wang Kersen's words, Xiao Kai fell into a profound silence. Two individuals, having grown up in an orphanage, have endured numerous hardships together, ultimately regarding one another as their sole family and spiritual refuge. He is resolutely averse to any misfortune befalling Wang Kersen, just as she is equally unwilling to witness him in peril, wishing fervently not to become a burden to him. Therefore, Wang Kersen proposed to accompany Xiao Kai in slaying zombies, ensuring that she could remain by his side at all times. Should Xiao Kai encounter danger, even if she cannot assist, she must not become his liability. Most importantly, ever since she learned of Xiao Kai's utilization of the evolution crystal core, her concerns for his physical state have persisted. To keep a vigilant eye on his health, she must stay close to him. Furthermore, based on her understanding of Xiao Kai's character, he would undoubtedly attempt to experiment with the zombie crystal core, the effects of which remain uncertain. Until its implications are fully understood, she prefers that he refrain from excessive use of it. Though Xiao Kai had the intention to decline, reluctant to place Wang Kersen in harm's way, the unwavering determination reflected in her eyes rendered his words futile. With a resigned sigh, he acquiesced with a nod. Upon witnessing his agreement, Wang Kersen's face illuminated with a captivating smile as she turned and entered the kitchen. After their meal, Xiao Kai escorted Wang Kersen out of the courtyard, having resolved to teach her how to combat zombies. The first order of business was to procure a suitable weapon for her. Wang Kersen had already contemplated this during dinner. There was a martial arts enthusiast residing in the old district who possessed a collection of cold weapons, among which she was certain there would be something fitting for her. As Wang Kersen led Xiao Kai along a winding path, he nearly lost all sense of direction before she finally pushed open a gate. Upon entering the courtyard, they were greeted by two weapon racks brimming with an array of cold weapons, swords, spears, and various implements of combat, causing Xiao Kai's eyes to gleam with excitement. However, Wang Kersen paid no heed to the weapons on the racks, and instead proceeded directly into the room. The items outside were merely decorative, unsharpened trinkets used by the elderly resident for exercise. The true treasures awaited within. Noticing Xiao Kai's inclination to select a weapon, she cautioned him. Upon hearing her words, Xiao Kai's interest waned instantly. In the past, he would have been unable to resist the temptation to try them out, but now, an unsharpened weapon would be ineffectual against zombies. What good would it be but for scrap metal? Following Wang Kersen into the room, he observed a tranquil environment devoid of zombies or other people. In the center of the living room stood a display case, upon which rested a singular item, a beautifully archaic longsword, approximately 1.2 meters in length. It seemed Wang Kersen was already aware of the sword's existence. As she walked directly to the display case and lifted the longsword from its pedestal, the longsword was drawn with a soft chime, revealing a gleaming blade approximately 1 meter in length and 3 centimeters in width, its thickest part barely exceeding the diameter of a cigarette. The edge glimmered with a chilling light, and even Xiao Kai, who had no knowledge of swords, could discern its quality. This sword had been purchased by the old gentleman from an antique dealer, reportedly costing him nearly half of his life savings. He cherished it dearly, seldom allowing anyone to touch it. During my previous visits to conduct checkups, he had proudly showcased it. But now the sword remained while the old man was no longer present, a sign of ominous tidings. Wang Kersen, while wielding the longsword and searching for her rhythm, expressed her sentiments with a hint of melancholy. She frequently visited the elderly for medical examinations, and over time had developed a bond with them. Noticing her somber mood, Xiao Kai suggested they venture forth to slay some zombies, a proposition Wang Kersen gladly accepted as she was eager to test the longsword in her hands. The zombies in the old town had gathered predominantly near the market and the nursing home, Yet both locations had been cleared by Xiao Kai. The multitude of zombies outside posed too great a danger for Wang Kersen, so he opted to guide her in search of solitary zombies within the old town. Given the sparse population, it took nearly an hour of wandering before they encountered a lone zombie near the outskirts of the area. The weakness of zombies lies in their heads. Your longsword is not suited for slashing. Instead, thrust the blade into its eye socket, ensuring to maintain a safe distance to avoid being scratched or bitten. Although Xiao Kai was aware that Wang Kersen understood this well, he felt compelled to remind her nonetheless. Upon noticing the two, the zombie lunged forward with a terrifying shriek. Frowning, Xiao Kai observed the staggering creature, realizing its movements had nearly returned to its former state. While at the hospital, Wang Kersen had encountered zombies up close, often in groups, so facing a single zombie, though nerve-wracking, did not instill fear within her. She boldly approached the creature, longsword drawn. Conversely, Xiao Kai appeared more anxious than she, gripping his machete tightly, prepared to rush in and rescue her at any moment. As she closed the distance, Wang Kersen raised her sword and aimed for the zombie's eye socket. Xiao Kai, witnessing her thrust, instinctively felt a surge of dread. The sword's tip was angled too low. While it seemed directed at the eye, the droop meant it would merely strike the zombie's cheek. Indeed, when Wang Kersen's sword made contact, it failed to penetrate the eye socket, instead landing several centimeters lower, the blade halted by the facial bones. Despite the sword's sharpness, her strength was insufficient to pierce through the zombie's skull, and as the creature swayed, her blade merely grazed its cheek. Just as the zombie was about to pounce on Wang Kersen, Xiao Kai rushed forward with his machete raised. "Stay back. I can handle this," she asserted. Wang Kersen sidestepped a few paces to evade the lunging zombie and called out to Xiao Kai. Earlier, she had underestimated the weight of the long sword and, having never wielded one before, she had thrust at the zombie with the blade held horizontally, causing the tip to droop significantly. Aiming upwards, she targeted the creature's chin. Upon hearing Xiao Kai's prompt, Wang Kersen gripped the long sword firmly, evaded another attack from the zombie, and found her angle, driving the sword sharply upward. With a satisfying thrust, the blade pierced the zombie's chin, penetrating into its skull. The once menacing creature fell silent and toppled to the side. After withdrawing the sword, Wang Kersen turned and smiled at Xiao Kai. Aside from that moment of initial panic, her performance had vastly improved compared to Xiao Kai's first encounter with a zombie. Chapter 23. The evolution of zombies. After spending an afternoon honing her skills, Wang Kersen had become adept at dealing with solitary zombies, even managing to dispatch 3 at once without losing her composure. According to her, this progress could be attributed to her regular yoga practice, which had endowed her with excellent coordination and agility, coupled with a lack of fear towards the undead, a feat that most would find challenging. Throughout the afternoon, she had taken down a dozen zombies, though regrettably, none possessed the coveted crystal cores, a fact that was anticipated by both of them. Before nightfall, the two returned to their quarters in the market. At the dining table, Xiao Kai ate somewhat distractedly, occasionally furrowing his brow. "What's the matter? You've been silent since we got back. What's on your mind?" Wang Kersen inquired, intrigued by Xiao Kai's demeanor. Setting down his chopsticks, Xiao Kai looked at her and asked, "Have you noticed anything different about today as zombies compared to those in the hospital?" "You're referring to their agility," Wang Kersen replied, glancing at Xiao Kai as he ate leisurely. "I noticed it when I encountered the first zombie today. Although its movements still seemed somewhat stiff, they were far more fluid than those we observed in the hospital." Precisely. Had the zombies in the hospital been as agile as today's, we would never have made it out. It appears these creatures are continuously evolving. Perhaps in a few days, they will regain their former abilities. At that point, my current strength may not suffice for survival. I must become stronger. After voicing his concern, Xiao Kai turned his gaze towards Wang Kersen. "You're considering consuming the zombie crystal cores, aren't you?" Wang Kersen, understanding his thoughts without needing to guess, felt a slight tremor in her hand holding the chopsticks. With a hint of resignation, she replied, "It's not solely about the crystal cores. If I hunt more zombies and accumulate combat experience, that will also enhance my strength. However, consuming the cores might indeed be the quickest route." Upon observing Wang Kersen's demeanor, Xiao Kai surmised the nature of her concerns. In an effort to alleviate her anxiety, he resolved to procure the zombie crystal core the following day and to temporarily conceal its use from her. He harbored a foreboding intuition that, at most within 2 days, all zombies would regain their pre-mortem agility. At that juncture, the likelihood of survival for those who remained would be alarmingly slim when confronted by the undead. Even he, Xiao Kai, would find it implausible to face dozens or even hundreds of zombies as he had the previous day. Perhaps just a handful could prove fatal. If he were alone, he might accept the risk, but with Wang Kersen by his side, he could not allow such a fate to befall her. The zombie crystal cores, derived from the corpses of the undead, were fraught with unknown viral content, and reckless usage could yield dire consequences. Let us first assess the situation outside the old city tomorrow, Wang Kursen proposed earnestly, fully aware of Xiao Kai's trepidation. The nature of the crystal cores remained untested, and she feared the potential peril that could ensue. After expressing her concerns, she chose to ignore him and resumed her meal, finishing the remainder of her bowl of rice. The next morning, as Xiao Kai emerged from his room, he was greeted by the sight of Wang Kursen having prepared breakfast. She was seated in the living room, savoring a bowl of egg noodles, with another steaming bowl set aside for him. After they had eaten, they tidied up and armed themselves before stepping outside. As they exited the courtyard, Xiao Kai immediately sensed something amiss. Previously, there had been a zombie carcass by the roadside, but now it lay reduced to a mere pile of bones, utterly devoid of flesh and blood. Upon closer inspection, he noted the scattered bones bore numerous bite marks. Frowning, he quickened his pace towards the market. Upon arrival, his expression darkened further. The zombies he had dispatched were now nothing but skeletons. The market was littered with fragmented bones, some already gnawed to pieces. This place is no longer safe. We must investigate the situation outside, and if feasible, return to gather our belongings and depart, he declared, piecing together that these remains were likely the work of evolved rats. Once the local zombies had been consumed, they might very well become the next target. It was imperative that they leave swiftly. Throughout their journey, he noted that the zombies he had slain just days prior had transformed into white bones overnight, and an overwhelming sense of danger loomed over him like a dark cloud. Upon reaching the outskirts of the old city, he beheld zombies meandering along the road, their movements no longer rigid. The weight upon his chest felt as heavy as stone, making even the act of breathing a challenge. To ascertain the extent of the zombie's evolution, he instructed Wang Kursen to take refuge within a nearby building while he stealthily approached a lone zombie at the roadside. Unbeknownst to him, the creatures he now observed had not only regained their bodily functions, but had also significantly enhanced their olfactory senses in pursuit of sustenance. His sudden appearance instantly alerted the surrounding horde of dozens of zombies, who caught the scent of fresh flesh. In an instant, these undead creatures turned their lifeless gray eyes toward Xiao Kai. Under the gaze of so many zombies, he felt a prickling sensation at the back of his neck, and every hair on his body stood on end. As he witnessed the agile figures of the zombies rushing towards him, he wasted no time in turning to flee. Before stepping out, he had believed that even if the zombies had regained the physical prowess they possessed in life, his current fitness level would enable him to confront a dozen of them simultaneously. However, he now realized just how gravely mistaken he was. Moments ago, as the zombies charged at him, their speed was comparable to that of an ordinary person sprinting at full capacity. If there had only been 7 or 8 of them, he would have felt confident in his ability to handle the situation. Yet, with dozens of zombies surging towards him, retreat was his only option. A throng of zombies roared as they pursued Xiao Kai into the old city. As he passed the hiding spot of Wang Kursen, he gestured to her, signaling her to remain concealed before darting into a narrow alleyway. Once inside the alley, he felt a sense of relief from the immediate threat of a zombie ambush. His speed still surpassed that of the zombies, and he was confident he could gradually dispatch them. Although the narrow passageway had extended the line of zombies, it also restricted his movements, forcing him to strike downward with his machete. The zombies swayed as they ran, necessitating multiple strikes to land a fatal blow on each one. As Xiao Kai retreated while attacking, he dared not pause for even a moment. After slaying a mere dozen zombies, he found himself gasping for breath, feeling far more fatigued than when he had dispatched hundreds of the more sluggish zombies just 2 days prior. During those earlier encounters, he had not needed to evade. Each zombie had fallen with a single strike. Now, however, he found that he required at least 3 blows to bring down each of the zombies he faced. Chapter 24. Consuming the zombie crystal core. Glancing back at the gruesome spectacle of bloodied and dismembered zombies clawing at him, Xiao Kai mentally cursed their family. His arm bore several scratches, remnants of a careless encounter with the undead. Earlier, when he hesitated at a fork in the path, the zombies had seized the opportunity to close in, forcing him to confront the attacks of 3 of them simultaneously. The speed of the zombies' evolution was far beyond what he had anticipated. Merely facing 3 at once resulted in several painful scratches, their claws unnervingly sharp. Had he not swiftly recognized the danger and fled, he might have become a meal for the advancing horde. He attempted to leverage his speed to shake off the pursuing zombies, but each time he managed to gain some distance, stopping momentarily allowed them to quickly close the gap. He was acutely aware that the blood trickling from his wounds was drawing the relentless horde, and although his injuries had already begun to heal, the blood remained, a telltale mark that clung to him. The zombies, under the control of the virus, are devoid of fatigue. If one cannot escape their olfactory range in a brief span of time, these relentless creatures will pursue him until his strength is utterly spent. While he currently possesses a speed that surpasses that of the zombies, Maintaining such velocity over an extended period proves to be an insurmountable challenge, which is why he remains unable to shake off his pursuers. He maneuvers in circles, striving to distance himself from the location where Wang Kursin is concealed, all the while contemplating strategies to eliminate the zombies trailing behind him. These zombies, now capable of both running and jumping, have transcended the limitations of ordinary obstacles. As he deliberates on how to dispatch the zombies, he suddenly discovers a narrow alleyway, barely wide enough for a single person, nestled between two adjacent buildings. A glimmer of hope ignites in Xiao Kai's eyes as he makes a swift turn and plunges into the alley. The zombies, seeing him dart into the passage, fervently follow suit, attempting to squeeze in after him. However, the zombies are oblivious to the concept of queuing. The lingering scent of blood on Xiao Kai entices them to jostle at the entrance, each vying to be the first to enter. Once inside the alley, Xiao Kai halts and, turning around, gazes at the horde of zombies desperately attempting to push their way in. A cruel smile creeps across his lips as he reflects on how these zombies had once pursued him like a frightened dog. Now, the tables have turned, and it is his turn to exact vengeance. Standing within the alley, he raises his machete high, awaiting the arrival of the zombies. When the first zombie finally breaks through, having lost an arm in the process, it lunges at him with a roar, only to be met with a swift strike to its head. With the first zombie through the entrance, others begin to follow suit, and with their numbers diminished, he wields his machete, effortlessly dispatching them while retreating. As the influx of zombies from outside dwindles, their entry becomes increasingly rapid, yet Xiao Kai only has to confront one zombie at a time. Apart from a minor injury sustained when he retreated too slowly and was scratched by a fallen zombie, all were slain within the confines of the narrow passage. Once he is certain that no more zombies will surge in, he lowers his machete and collapses onto the ground, gasping for breath. The wound on his thigh radiates a searing pain. He clearly perceives that while the injury is healing, the rate of recovery has significantly slowed compared to the previous days, likely due to the evolution of the virus within the zombies. Although his injuries are not severe, he is but an ordinary person, possessing limited tolerance for pain. As his muscles relax, the agony intensifies, causing him to gasp. In between breaths to alleviate the pain, he silently resolves to become stronger, powerful enough to be invincible. Only in this way can he minimize future injuries, or perhaps avoid them altogether. The multitude of zombie corpses strewn about the alley represents the first step in his journey toward strength. According to his analysis with Wang Kursin, it is certain that among these zombies lie crystal cores. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he rises, seizes his machete, and approaches the lifeless bodies of the zombies. The analysis conducted by the two individuals was not erroneous. There were a total of 18 zombies in the alley, each possessing a zombie crystal core nestled within its head. Grinning with satisfaction at the crystal core in his hand, he planned to find a suitable location shortly to consume these cores. Upon exiting the alley, Xiao Kai casually selected a nearby room and stepped inside. The peculiar odor characteristic of an elderly person's room wafted through the air, and once he confirmed the absence of zombies, he rummaged through the kitchen to find a porcelain bowl, placing the zombie crystal cores he had extracted from his pocket onto the table. As he contemplated the imminent consumption of these cores, a wave of nausea washed over him. For these cores had been excavated from the brains of the undead. It was impossible to deny the unsettling nature of this fact. Grasping a zombie crystal core, he exerted considerable force to crush it, only to be taken aback when it remained intact. The shell of the core seemed thin, yet possessed an unexpected sturdiness. After several futile attempts to breach it with his hands, he resorted to using the back of a cleaver, finally managing to create an opening. As the dark red liquid oozed from the core, he hesitated, for the anticipated aroma failed to materialize. Instead, he was met with a faint metallic scent, devoid of any shimmering allure, resembling a drop of somewhat desiccated blood. This differed vastly from the evolutionary crystal core he had previously consumed, leading him to contemplate abandoning the endeavor. Yet, when he envisioned the evolved zombies outside and the skeletal remains of those who had met their demise, he realized he was left with only two paths, either perish or grow stronger. Resolute in his decision, he clenched his teeth and poured the dark red liquid from the zombie crystal core into his mouth. Instantly, a robust metallic taste surged into his nasal passages, nearly provoking a gag reflex. He fought against the urge to retch, forcing himself to swallow the repugnant liquid. Moments later, he glanced at the wound on his thigh. Noting that it had nearly healed, the speed of recovery seemed to have accelerated slightly. Perhaps the quantity he had consumed was insufficient. Casting a glance at the remaining zombie crystal cores on the table, he seized them and began to smash each one open, pouring the dark red liquid into the bowl. By the time all the cores had been cracked, the bowl contained nearly half a bowl's worth of the liquid, filling the room with a strong metallic scent. Gaining his composure, he took a deep breath, lifted the bowl, and tilted his head back to drink. Having already ventured this far, he reasoned that an increase or decrease in quantity was inconsequential. Giving up was not in his nature. As the liquid coursed down his throat, he immediately sensed a change. It felt as though a fire had ignited in his abdomen, rapidly spreading throughout his body. The wounds that had been healing gradually began to mend at an astonishing pace, returning to their original state within mere seconds. However, at that moment, he had no inclination to focus on his injuries. His cheeks flushed with intensity as he gritted his teeth, enduring the pain coursing through him. His muscles began to swell, as if someone were inflating him from within, and the expanding sinews made him feel as though he might explode at any moment. Chapter 25. Another evolution. If a mirror were present at this moment, Xiao Kai would discover that the bulging muscles on his body have surpassed the realm of ordinary human comprehension, far more exaggerated than those of bodybuilding champions. Fortunately, this state did not endure for long. As he sensed his muscles inflating to their utmost limit, the searing sensation enveloping his body gradually dissipated, and his muscles began to retract. As they shrank, an abundance of sweat, akin to oil, exuded from his pores, swiftly soaking his entire form. Once his muscles returned to their normal state, he was astonished to find a remarkable transformation in his physique. The most striking change was in his abdomen. Previously, he had devoted countless hours to training merely to prevent excess fat, yet had struggled to develop defined abs. Now, however, there were distinctly 8 perfect abdominal muscles. Muscles in other areas of his body also felt significantly stronger than before. As he clenched his fist, he could feel an overwhelming surge of power coursing through him, an urgent desire to unleash it. Glancing around the room, he sought an object to test the weight and hardness of his punch. But the space was filled with aged wooden furniture. Even in his previous state, he could have easily shattered these items, let alone now. Ultimately, his gaze settled upon the wall. With a resounding thud, Xiao Kai struck the wall with his fist. A cloud of dust erupted, and he widened his eyes in astonishment at the hole that appeared, a perfect indentation matching the size of his fist. He could sense the immense strength he now possessed, yet he had never anticipated that he could break through the wall with a single blow. Although the walls of the old district were not as robust as those of reinforced concrete structures outside, they were still not easily penetrable by a mere fist. Yet, he had accomplished this feat effortlessly. Importantly, this was not even his full strength, and his knuckles bore no marks, clearly indicating that he had evolved once more. He gazed incredulously at his fist, leaning closer to examine the hole in the wall. Upon confirming that the wall was indeed constructed of cement bricks, a gleam of excitement illuminated his face. He could now ascertain that he had indeed grown significantly stronger. However, the extent of his newfound strength would require further exploration. Nevertheless, he believed that he could at least protect Wang Kursen now. Grasping the machete, which felt as light as a feather in his hand, Xiao Kai exited the room. Nearly an hour had passed, and he needed to return to Wang Kursen's side swiftly. On his way back, Xiao Kai collected a dozen zombie cores from the corpses he had just slain. These would serve as invaluable assets in his journey toward greater strength. As he walked, he noticed that not only had his physical abilities improved, but also his memory seemed significantly sharper than before. Earlier, he had thought it would take considerable time to locate Wang Kursen's hiding place, especially since he had just navigated through a myriad of paths while evading zombies. Yet now, he could vividly recall every route he had traversed. A few minutes later, as he turned a corner, he caught sight of the room where Wang Kursen was hiding. Upon approaching, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from within, indicating that Wang Kursen had already detected his presence. Hearing the footsteps, Xiao Kai decided against entering the room, opting instead to wait outside for Wang Kursen to emerge. Before long, she dashed out of the room, her face etched with concern. As she exited, she grasped Xiao Kai and scrutinized him from head to toe, only exhaling a sigh of relief once she confirmed he bore no wounds. "I'm so glad you're unscathed," Wang Kursen expressed, her eyes filled with apprehension. Earlier, witnessing Xiao Kai being pursued by a horde of zombies into the old town had stirred her desire to seek him out. Yet, she knew that even if she found him, her presence would only hinder him, forcing him to divide his attention between fending off the zombies and protecting her. Thus, she resolved to remain where she was, awaiting his return, which indeed he did, unscathed. "What could possibly happen to me? You underestimate my resilience," he replied. "However, the rate at which these zombies are evolving is alarming. If we intend to leave the city, we must prepare swiftly. Otherwise, we might find ourselves trapped here." He regarded Wang Kursen with a serious expression, realizing that the zombies' evolution had surpassed their expectations, occurring at a pace far quicker than anticipated. "Why must we leave? There aren't many zombies left in the old town. Can't we stay here and wait for rescue?" Wang Kursen questioned, her concern evident as she struggled to comprehend Xiao Kai's urgency to depart. To her, the old town not only lacked zombies but also boasted ample food. making it an ideal hiding place. I wish we could remain, but it's simply not feasible. This place is too perilous. You saw the cleanly picked bones along the way. They were likely leftovers from evolved rats. Consider how many evolved rats it would take to devour hundreds of zombies overnight. If we linger here, even if we don't perish at the hands of the zombies, we cannot escape the onslaught of those evolved rats. In light of Wang Kursen's insistence on waiting for rescue, Xiao Kai patiently elucidated the situation. When shall we leave this place? Upon learning of the substantial presence of evolved rats, Wang Kursen's complexion paled. For her, the thought of rats could be even more terrifying than zombies. We aren't in haste. First, I will eliminate some zombies and collect a few zombie cores before we depart, Xiao Kai stated, making his way towards the outskirts of the old town. He needed to familiarize himself with his newfound strength, while he sensed he had grown considerably stronger. He was uncertain of the specifics. Only through combat with zombies could he gain a clearer understanding of his current physical state, as well as gather some zombie cores in the process. As he reached the periphery of the old town, he noticed that several zombies had begun to infiltrate the area, likely having followed the earlier group of zombies. However, these newcomers had arrived too late to detect Xiao Kai's scent, thus failing to pursue him inside. The emergence of these zombies has indeed saved him some time outdoors. He instructed Wang Kursen, who was behind him, to find a hiding place, as these zombies were beyond her current capabilities to confront. Once Wang Kursen was concealed, he brandished his machete and charged into the horde of zombies, his weapon slicing through the air with a swift motion, instantly severing a zombie's head, which soared into the sky. Xiao Kai's figure darted through the throng of zombies. Despite their regained agility, they could not even graze his attire, and with the occasional kick he delivered, he sent zombies weighing over 100 pounds flying several meters away. As he continued to slay the undead, his exhilaration grew. The once menacing zombies that had caused him to hide were now effortlessly dispatched, as if he were chopping vegetables. From a distance, Wang Kursen observed Xiao Kai's performance with an increasingly furrowed brow. The power he exhibited now starkly contrasted with what he had shown when rescuing her. She was certain that he had indeed consumed zombie cores. Chapter 26 revealed that there were merely a handful, just a dozen or so. After his bout, Xiao Kai gained some insight into his transformation. If prior to his first ingestion of an evolution core, his physical prowess was merely that of an ordinary warrior, then after his initial consumption, his capabilities had soared to the level of a master soldier. This pinnacle of human physicality, however, was surpassed when he ingested the zombie cores. Now, he could effortlessly cover over 10 meters in a single second, and with one hand, he could lift and hurl a zombie weighing over 100 pounds several meters away. When all the zombies lay defeated, he nonchalantly wiped the blood from his machete. The zombies scattered across the ground hardly posed a challenge worthy of his sweat. After gathering the cores from the fallen zombies, Xiao Kai approached Wang Kursen with a look of excitement, only to realize that she was gazing at him with deep concern. You just consumed zombie cores, didn't you? She asked anxiously before he could draw near. Just a little bit, he replied with a sheepish grin, scratching his head. A little bit? How much is that? Not much. Just a dozen or so. Noticing the growing worry on her face, he felt a twinge of guilt. A dozen? How could you dare consume so many? These have not been tested. We don't even know their composition. Do you feel any discomfort? Wang Kursen's alarm was palpable upon hearing that he had ingested so many cores. Don't fret. See, I'm perfectly fine. These zombie cores don't seem as terrifying as one might think, which is why I indulged a bit. Otherwise, could I be this formidable? He gestured for her to lower her voice, while explaining. Just because you're fine now doesn't mean you'll be fine later. You can't keep acting recklessly like this. Do you have any idea how worried I am? Observing Xiao Kai's nonchalant demeanor, Wang Kursen felt tears welling up in her eyes. Yet, she understood that no amount of worry could alter the fact that Xiao Kai had already consumed over a dozen zombie cores. Do not be so anxious. If anything were to happen, I would have experienced it during my first consumption. Moreover, I can sense that this zombie core is evidently inferior to the first one I ingested. Xiao Kai reassured her while displaying the zombie core he held in his hand. It is best if nothing is amiss. However, should you feel any discomfort, you must inform me. These cores need to be tested to ascertain their composition. With a sigh, Wang Kursen glanced at Xiao Kai before accepting the zombie core from his hand and turning to head back. As she walked away, he recognized that she was concealing her tears from him, having decided to leave this place upon returning to their residence. They gathered the medicines collected from the hospital and proceeded to the market to amass essential supplies, primarily food and other necessities. Xiao Kai located a heavy-duty truck designed for transporting soil at the construction site. This vehicle, with its substantial horsepower and elevated chassis, possessed the capability to navigate through hordes of zombies, making it his preferred choice for their departure. Numerous such trucks were parked at the site, with keys often left inside. He selected one that appeared to be in the best condition. After thoroughly washing the truck bed and loading 2 canisters of diesel, he drove into the old city. As it was his first time operating such a truck on the narrow streets of the old district, he encountered several bumps and scrapes before finally arriving at the market. Fortunately, the truck's sturdy build mitigated the impact of the obstacles encountered along the way, preserving its performance. In the market's open area, they had already laid out the supplies they had gathered: dozens of bags of rice, noodles, cooking oil, various seasonings, and an assortment of dried goods, filling more than half of the truck bed. Had there been more available at the market, Xiao Kai would have gladly filled the entire truck, as these provisions were vital for survival in the apocalyptic world. Even though he was capable in combat, he could not fight on an empty stomach. Had time not been pressing, he would have considered going door to door to collect more. However, he did not leave the remaining space in the truck empty. The market as sole supermarket housed many desirable items, including an array of cigarettes, alcohol, and snacks, which he loaded until the truck bed was filled to capacity. Once everything was secured, he covered the truck bed with a tarp. Satisfied with the fully loaded truck, Xiao Kai clapped his hands, confident that this bounty would sustain both him and Wang Kersen for several months. As they finalized their preparations, twilight began to descend, signaling that it was not an opportune time to depart. Wang Kersen utilized some leftover scraps to prepare a reasonably sumptuous dinner, deciding they would rest for the night and set out the following day. "Snail, where do you think we should go after we leave?" Xiao Kai inquired, tossing a piece of cured chicken into his mouth as he chewed. "Let us head to Guangyang Medical University, and please refrain from calling me Snotworm again." Wang Kersen replied with a hint of exasperation, casting a disapproving glance at Xiao Kai. Upon hearing Wang Kersen's words, Xiao Kai was momentarily taken aback. He had merely asked out of casual curiosity, not expecting any substantial response from her. In truth, he envisioned seeking a remote sanctuary away from the city to weather the apocalypse in peace. Yet it appeared that Wang Kersen had already set her sights on a specific goal. "Do you remember the professor I mentioned? We need to clarify your condition. And among my acquaintances, he is the only one who has conducted research in this area. Thus I must seek him out," Wang Kersen explained, observing Xiao Kai's perplexed expression. "You mean the one studying gene locks? You have no idea whether he is alive or dead, and yet you intend to find him?" Guangyang City is significantly larger than Linhai City, teeming with countless zombies, Xiao Kai remarked, frowning at the thought of embarking on a journey to Guangyang Medical University. Situated on the outskirts of Guangyang City, over 500 kilometers from Linhai City, it is a first-tier metropolis with a population exceeding 10 million, making it far more perilous than Linhai City. "I cannot guarantee about others, but Professor Gong is undoubtedly alive. He is a research enthusiast, possessing a private laboratory at the medical university, and no one can enter without his permission. He typically resides there, often for 10 days to half a month at a time, so he is unlikely to have contracted the virus," Wang Kersen asserted confidently, causing the words of caution that Xiao Kai intended to express to falter on his lips. He understood Wang Kersen's concern for his health, and he too harbored his own worries. Having consumed both the evolved crystal core from the mutated rats and the zombie crystal core, both had undoubtedly impacted his body. Although he felt no immediate discomfort, the uncertainty of future repercussions loomed large. Furthermore, if he wished to continue growing stronger, he would need to utilize these crystal cores. Yet without a clear understanding of their specific effects, not only would Wang Kersen be anxious, but he too would bear a psychological burden. Thus, it seemed he truly could not avoid a trip to Guangyang Medical University. With a resigned sigh, Xiao Kai ceased his protests and began to indulge in a hearty meal. Chapter 27. The feast at the dining table. Xiao Kai devoured all the dishes with remarkable speed, leaving Wang Kersen utterly astonished. It is noteworthy that prior to their departure, Wang Kersen had gathered a substantial amount of leftovers from the market, preparing a feast ample enough to satisfy 6 or 7 individuals. Yet now, it had all been consumed by Xiao Kai, and observing his seemingly unperturbed belly, she even began to suspect he might still be hungry. Wang Kersen's incredulous gaze, akin to that directed at a monster, caused Xiao Kai to chuckle awkwardly. He recalled that after his last consumption of the evolved crystal core, he had similarly exhibited an insatiable appetite. It appeared that the most immediate side effect of utilizing the crystal cores was indeed an increased hunger. After dinner, Wang Kersen habitually tidied up the dishes, while Xiao Kai rose to check the doors and windows, implementing additional protective measures. Once he confirmed that all was secure, he returned indoors. As darkness enveloped the night, both took warm showers, preparing for a restful slumber. After departing from this place, they might find it difficult to enjoy even a simple hot bath, let alone a good night's sleep. That evening, in an unprecedented decision to monitor Xiao Kai's well-being, Wang Kersen allowed him to share her room. As they listened to each other's breathing, both found it challenging to drift into slumber. Suddenly, a harsh scratching sound pierced the darkness. Upon hearing it, Xiao Kai abruptly sat up, He recognized that sound all too well. His first encounter with the evolved rats had begun with a similar noise. However, this time, the sound was significantly louder, emanating not just from the door, but also from several windows. He surmised that a considerable number of evolved rats had arrived. The evolved rats outside the windows did not alarm him much. The steel bars on the security screens were substantial, and he had even added an extra layer of wire mesh, making it difficult for them to enter. The only vulnerable point was the main door, which lacked a security gate, and the wire mesh could not be secured there. He had initially thought that the dozens, if not hundreds, of zombies he had dispatched earlier that afternoon would delay the evolved. As the remaining evolved mice surged into the room, they immediately began their assault on Xiao Kai. Yet he dispatched them effortlessly with a single stroke of his blade. Faced with these evolved mice once more, he experienced no pressure whatsoever. In terms of both speed and reflexes, he was vastly superior to them. Although the strength of each individual evolved mouse was inferior to his, their overwhelming numbers caused him considerable distress. More and more evolved mice poured in from outside, soon filling the room with their ominous shadows. The emergency lights had all been toppled by the onslaught, leaving only a few still flickering on the walls, while the rest lay rendered useless. Xiao Kai found himself forced back to the threshold of the room where Wang Kursin was concealed. Here, he realized retreat was no longer an option. Directly behind him lay the room where Wang Kursin was hiding, and should he withdraw, she would be exposed to the evolved mice. Having vowed to protect her, he was resolute in his determination to fulfill that promise. He would not allow a single one of these creatures to breach the threshold unless it cost him his life. Inside the room, Wang Kursin stood behind the door, sword in hand, contemplating several times whether to open it and assist Xiao Kai. However, considering her own capabilities, she feared that her presence might bring him not aid, but rather complications. Ultimately, she relinquished the thought of opening the door, closing her eyes and leaning against it, listening intently to the commotion outside as the two stood back to back separated by a wooden barrier. Xiao Kai pressed his lips together tightly, his gaze unwavering as he surveyed the throng of evolved mice before him. In a mere span of minutes, a pile of their fragmented corpses had accumulated at his feet. Yet the relentless tide of their numbers showed no sign of abating. As time progressed, wounds began to appear across his body, several inflicted by the claws of the evolved mice, the most severe being a significant chunk bitten from his arm. Despite the excruciating pain causing him to break into a cold sweat, the blade in his hand showed no sign of faltering. Each swing claimed the life of yet another evolved mouse. The air was thick with the pungent scent of blood, saturating the floor with a crimson hue as the blood of the fallen transformed the hall into a macabre scene, inciting the remaining evolved mice into a frenzied state. Many began to feast upon the corpses of their own kind. Although Xiao Kai possessed remarkable self-healing abilities, allowing him to recover swiftly from the wounds, the rate of injury outweighed the speed of healing, leading to an increasing number of wounds adorning his body. The mounting injuries gradually sapped his strength, and he realized that if he did not devise a strategy soon, he would surely perish here at the hands of these evolved mice. In a desperate attempt, he kicked the corpses of the evolved mice at his feet, hoping to divert the attention of others to their consumption and thereby reduce the frequency of their attacks. However, the sheer volume of the evolved mice rendered this tactic largely ineffective. The weight of the blade in his hand began to feel burdensome, and his strikes grew sluggish, with several missing their mark entirely. As he delivered another kick to propel a corpse away, a red evolved crystal core emerged from the blood. Beside it lay the remains of an evolved mouse, its head cleaved in two. Upon catching sight of the evolutionary crystal core, Xiao Kai's eyes sparkled with excitement. After swiftly dispatching an approaching mutated rat with a slash of his blade, he bent down to retrieve the crystal core from the ground, deftly evading a foul-mouthed bite from another mutated rat. Once he grasped the evolutionary crystal core, he carelessly wiped it and, without a glance, tossed it into his mouth. Chapter 28. Perhaps you should take a bath first. The mingled scent of the mutated rat's brain matter and blood tantalized his taste buds with a sharp thrill. However, upon biting into the crystal core, he discovered a flavor that surpassed that of the zombie crystal cores, evoking a sensation akin to savoring a delicacy of the world, which prompted him to unconsciously lick his lips. As the evolutionary crystal core settled within him, a warm wave surged from his abdomen, enveloping his entire body. Simultaneously, an itch began to spread across his skin, and his wounds swiftly began to heal. Even the flesh that had been bitten from his arm was gradually regenerating. Within a mere 10 minutes, his physique returned to its peak condition, even feeling a notch stronger than before. Xiao Kai licked the corner of his mouth. His gaze towards the mutated rats transformed entirely. They had become mere prey for him to harvest more evolutionary crystal cores. The mutated rats posed no lethal threat to him, only hoping to overwhelm him through sheer numbers. Yet, once this advantage was disrupted, these creatures became stepping stones for his ascendance. In the subsequent battles, each slash of his blade aimed straight for the heads of the mutated rats. However, these creatures were clearly no match for zombies, as even dozens of mutated rats would scarcely yield a single evolutionary crystal core. Yet, their sheer numbers were overwhelming. After slaying nearly 100 mutated rats, he finally acquired another evolutionary crystal core, replenishing his stamina and further amplifying his strength. As the carnage continued, Xiao Kai became drenched in blood, the aura of ferocity around him intensifying to the point where the remaining mutated rats merely circled him, rarely daring to attack. When dawn broke, they scattered in a frenzy, leaving behind a pool of blood and shattered bones submerged within it. Throughout the night, Xiao Kai had exterminated nearly 1,000 mutated rats. Had it not been for their corpses being devoured by their kin, the room would scarcely have been able to contain them. He had obtained a total of 6 evolutionary crystal cores, all of which he consumed. In the adjacent room, Wang Kurson similarly endured a sleepless night. The incessant squeaks of the mutated rats outside punctuated by Xiao Kai's occasional muffled groans. Each groan felt akin to a knife, piercing her chest. Yet it was these intermittent sounds that assured her of Xiao Kai's survival. The torment of the night had left her eyes bloodshot, her fingers tightly gripping her sword, the prolonged strain causing her knuckles to pale. Finally, when all sounds outside subsided, Wang Kurson could no longer contain herself. She grasped the doorknob and, with a sudden force, flung the door open. As the door swung open, Wang Kurson beheld the sight of Xiao Kai, drenched in blood, standing at the threshold like a guardian deity, wielding a cleaver. The entire room was a canvas of crimson. Even the ceiling dripped with the sanguine fluid, its origin a mystery. Upon hearing the door creak, the bloodthirsty Xiao Kai abruptly turned, his eyes glinting with ferocity, the cleaver poised to strike. Yet, upon recognizing Wang Kurson standing behind him, the menace in his gaze swiftly receded, and the weapon gradually lowered. Despite the rapid dissolution of his fierce demeanor, Wang Kurson was left in a state of shock. Petrified by the sight of Xiao Kai, blood-soaked and standing amidst the scarlet room, resembling a demon that had emerged from the depths of hell. Fixing his gaze upon her, Xiao Kai inhaled deeply before exhaling a breath laden with the metallic scent of blood, his body succumbing to fatigue as he collapsed into Wang Kurson's embrace. After a night of battle, although his stamina could be replenished through evolution crystals, his spirit had reached its zenith. Driven by an unwavering resolve to protect Wang Kurson, he had not retreated a single step until he beheld her safe presence, at which point he finally allowed himself to relax. Wang Kurson stumbled as Xiao Kai fell into her balance faltering and her body toppling toward the ground. Just as she was about to crash to the floor, she instinctively wrapped her arms around Xiao Kai, but her back struck the ground with a jolt, pain causing tears to well up in her eyes. Gritting her teeth against the agony, she quickly sat up to find Xiao Kai peacefully slumbering in her arms, his breathing steady. With a soft sigh, she surveyed the room. Littered with the corpses of evolved rodents and blood, it was evident they could no longer remain there. Once she hoisted Xiao Kai onto her back, she struggled to make her way outside, step by arduous step. When Xiao Kai awoke, he found himself on a bed in another room, clad only in his undergarments. His upper body free of blood, clearly having been meticulously cleaned. Even his hair was dry and bore the fragrant scent of shampoo. However, as he lifted the covers to sit up, he noticed that his lower half seemed less thoroughly attended to. While there were no overt signs of blood, the skin there was markedly redder than that of his upper body. He quickly deduced that Wang Kurson must have assisted him in cleaning up. And considering she was a girl, it was understandable that she might have felt shy, managing to clean his upper body but only giving his lower half a cursory wipe. He could even envision the blush that must have colored her cheeks at that moment. Perhaps sensing Xiao Kai's awakening, Wang Kurson entered the room, holding a set of clean sportswear, her face slightly flushed as she cast her gaze downward. "How long have I been asleep?" Xiao Kai inquired, feeling a bit bashful as he scratched his head. "Almost 6 hours. It's already noon," she replied. Upon hearing his voice, Wang Kurson's cheeks, which had already been tinged with red, deepened in hue, and even her ears felt warm. After Wang Kurson carried Xiao Kai into the room, the flush on her face had not faded. To ensure that Xiao Kai could rest comfortably, she hesitated for a long time before summoning the courage to help him remove his blood-soaked clothing. The tattered garments served as a stark reminder of the injuries he had sustained the previous night. After washing Xiao Kai's hair and cleansing his upper body, she found herself unable to bring herself to treat his lower half with the same care, managing only to wipe away the majority of the grime and blood. As she attended to his body, she meticulously examined his wounds, hoping to ascertain the severity of his injuries. To her surprise, she found no visible cuts, only the faint scars left from healed wounds. She was aware of Xiao Kai's remarkable recuperative abilities, but had not anticipated their extent. He bore the marks of a night's suffering without a single fresh wound, which eased her mind considerably. Once she had finished tending to him, every thought of Xiao Kai's well-defined physique sent a blush to her cheeks. Now that he was awake, it was clear he was aware of her efforts, and his face mirrored her own embarrassment. You should take a shower. The smell of blood is quite strong, she suggested, feeling awkward as he remained silent. After placing his clothes on the table, she hurriedly exited the room. Watching Wang Kerson's retreating figure, Xiao Kai raised his arm to catch a whiff of his own seemingly clean skin, only to be reminded of the lingering scent of blood. Chapter 29. Highway Junction. When Xiao Kai emerged from the shower, the stench of blood had finally dissipated, leaving only an empty bottle of shower gel in the bathroom. In the room, Wang Kerson had prepared a sumptuous feast, complete with a large pot of rice, clearly aware that Xiao Kai would have an increased appetite after his ordeal. Her thoughtful preparations allowed him to indulge in a hearty meal. What shall we do next? Should we leave this place? Wang Kerson asked, glancing at the clock on the wall, which was nearing 2 o'clock, as she began to tidy up the dishes. Let us go. We must leave today. And we should do so immediately, Xiao Kai replied without a moment's hesitation. The evolution of the rats from the previous night had made him acutely aware that, while the old city was devoid of zombies, it was not lacking in these evolved creatures. He had likely exterminated only a fraction, perhaps a tenth, or even 100th, of their number. If they remained, he feared he might be besieged by them again that night. Moreover, these evolved rats not only preyed on zombies, but also consumed their own kind. Last night, he had observed that those who feasted on their fellow creatures had become noticeably stronger than the rest. Once the evolved rats that had left that morning fully digested their meals, they would undoubtedly pose an even greater challenge. Thus, they had to depart today. However, before leaving, he needed to return once more. After slaying so many evolved rats, it was unlikely that only 6 evolution crystals remained. Having made the decision to leave immediately, Wang Kerson ceased her tidying, and together they armed themselves before stepping out into the world beyond. As Xiao Kai stepped outside, he contemplated returning to search for the evolution crystal cores, but was halted by Wang Kerson's call. Upon noticing the evolution crystal cores nestled in her palm, Xiao Kai's eyes widened in disbelief, as if he were gazing at a stranger. He could hardly fathom that Wang Kerson had dared to venture alone back into the room replete with the remains and blood of mutated rats to seek out the evolution crystal cores. Don't look at me with such peculiar eyes. I am, after all, a medical student. I have dissected corpses before. A mere scattering of blood and bones does not frighten me. Unfortunately, I only managed to find these 2 evolution crystal cores, she remarked, casually toying with the cores while her eyes flitted between Xiao Kai's lips and abdomen, evidently surmising that there were likely more than 2 cores, most of which had already been consumed by him. Mutated beasts are not zombies. It is only natural for there to be fewer evolution crystal cores. 2 is still commendable. Well, I shall be off to drive, Xiao Kai thought to himself, wary of revealing that he had devoured the crystal cores he had found the previous night, fearing it would only heighten Wang Kerson's concern. He scratched his head awkwardly, offering an embarrassed smile before hastily making his way toward the location where the truck was parked. This incident allowed both of them to cast aside the events of the morning, as if they had never transpired, and each resolved not to dwell on it further. The roads in the city are nearly blocked due to accidents. How do you plan to exit the city? Wang Kerson inquired curiously, seated in the passenger seat as she observed Xiao Kai steering the vehicle back to the construction site. Traversing the city streets is certainly not an option. But we are currently at the construction site, which has a dedicated transport route designed specifically for these large trucks. The sand, gravel, building materials, and construction waste are all transported in such trucks. This route was deliberately planned to ensure the safety of the city roads and maintain urban hygiene. Providing a more secluded pathway, the construction site does not waste funds on its upkeep. Thus it remains a rudimentary road paved with gravel, which those driving luxurious cars would certainly avoid. Before the outbreak of the virus, the construction site had ceased operations, so this route is guaranteed to be unobstructed, leading directly to the vicinity of the highway. As Xiao Kai spoke, he deftly maneuvered the steering wheel, bursting through the large iron gates of the construction site, where a rugged, gravel-paved road awaited. He cast a glance at the asphalt road a dozen meters away, now choked with an assortment of vehicles, while hordes of zombies wandered among them. Upon spotting the speeding truck, they all roared and charged toward it. Although these zombies had become surprisingly agile, the scattered vehicles obstructed their path. By the time they managed to navigate over the cars and through the intervening green belt, Xiao Kai's truck had already vanished from sight, leaving the zombies to bellow in frustration at the spot they once occupied. An hour later, a heavy truck appeared on a dirt road a few hundred meters from the highway entrance. Xiao Kai turned off the engine and brought the vehicle to a halt approximately a kilometer from the gravel road's exit. This location was shrouded in woods, with the asphalt road outside lying at least several hundred meters away on either side. At present, Xiao Kai remains unaware of the circumstances at the highway entrance. Recklessly driving forward could lead to unforeseen dangers, leaving him no time to turn back. He intends to disembark and assess the situation firsthand. If the blockage ahead proves too severe, preventing access to the highway, he must devise an alternative plan. He instructs Wang Kurson to remain in the vehicle while he steps out. Initially, he clears some zombies that have trailed behind the car, then cautiously advances, dispatching the wandering undead along the roadside and collecting a handful of zombie cores. The situation at the highway entrance is far better than he had anticipated. Although numerous abandoned vehicles litter the area, they have been pushed to the sides of the road. However, the vacant space is strewn with the corpses of zombies, most of which have begun to decay and emit a foul odor. Ahead at the highway entrance, he observes barricades constructed from sandbags, with a plethora of spent shell casings scattered across the ground alongside several abandoned assault rifles. Clearly, soldiers from the military district have previously cleared this area of zombies. It appears that the gunfire he heard a couple of days ago emanated from this very location. Yet the scene suggests that the soldiers did not gain the upper hand. Rather, they seem to have retreated in haste. The abandoned assault rifles, left behind in the frenzy, along with the nearby wandering zombies, many of whom are clad in green uniforms and armed with various weapons, indicate that these were indeed soldiers. This scenario vividly illustrates the urgency with which they must have vacated the area. As he gazes at the forsaken assault rifles, his eyes gleam with longing. Every young man, regardless of age, possesses an inexplicable fascination with firearms. Under normal circumstances, he would never have the opportunity to handle real weapons, yet now they lie before him. The only obstacle being the zombies that no longer pose a threat. He surveys the number of zombies outside, estimating that several thousand congregate at the highway entrance, with a dark mass of them visible further afield. It is evident that the previous day's battle attracted a significant horde of zombies. While these creatures do not currently threaten him, should he become encircled by such a multitude, he would undoubtedly be embroiled in a prolonged struggle, which would not only delay his departure but also endanger Wang Kurson's safety, an outcome he cannot abide. Chapter 30. Where did you find the gun? Gazing at the assault rifles before him, yet unable to grasp one, he feels an overwhelming sense of reluctance. After much contemplation, he resolves not to be greedy. Securing just one rifle will suffice. Once he obtains an assault rifle, he plans to swiftly return to the truck and depart. Having made the decision to procure an assault rifle, he begins to select his target. First and foremost, he dismisses those lying on the ground. The rifles discarded there are most likely devoid of ammunition, and those hanging from the zombies are also not worth considering if they lack magazines. Even if a rifle contains some bullets, it is unlikely to hold many without a magazine. After much deliberation, Xiao Kai ultimately settled on a zombie adorned with 3 magazines. The creature bore a youthful visage, and the assault rifle slung across its body appeared quite new, suggesting it belonged to a soldier who had recently joined the ranks. Having identified his target, he hesitated no longer. His body surged forth with the speed of a cheetah. The moment he appeared, the aimless zombies around him found a focus and began to roar as they lunged toward him. However, Xiao Kai's velocity was astonishing. By the time the zombies registered his presence, he had already reached the chosen zombie, swiftly severing its head with a decisive strike. In quick succession, he removed the assault rifle and magazines from the fallen creature, and before the other zombies could close in, he wielded his blade and dashed out of their encirclement. Emerging from the horde, Xiao Kai did not rush to escape. Instead, he led the zombies away from the highway entrance, contemplating that since he was already out, he might as well divert the nearby zombies as well. Prior to his venture, he had spied a modest grove across the way, primarily populated by mango trees with trunks around a foot in diameter, enclosed by a half-height wooden fence that held few zombies within. As Xiao Kai charged into the grove, a large throng of zombies behind him became ensnared by the fence, tumbling over one another in a chaotic heap. Seizing the opportunity, he maneuvered through the grove and re-emerged on the opposite side, returning to the highway entrance. Observing the zombies still attempting to breach the grove, he proudly caressed the assault rifle nestled in his arms and crouched behind a cluster of abandoned vehicles. Making his way back to the gravel road he had initially departed from. Once back, he sprinted towards the truck, and upon climbing aboard, he ignited the engine, rapidly steering toward the highway entrance. At this juncture, the zombies had congregated across the road, leaving the highway entrance largely devoid of their presence. As he barreled out of the gravel path, most of the zombies remained fixated on the opposite side, their attention diverted by the truck's arrival. The creatures, drawn to any sound, would target anything that moved, showing no discernment regarding the source of the noise. Seated in the vehicle, Xiao Kai watched as the zombies surged toward him like a tide, with a firm grip on the steering wheel. He collided with several that obstructed his path before charging toward the highway entrance. He had already noted that there were not many vehicles on the highway, and those that remained had been cleared to the sides. His only obstacle now lay in the defensive fortifications at the entrance. However, he was confident that the sandbag barricades would pose no challenge to his heavy truck. Securing himself, Xiao Kai tightened his grip on the steering wheel, pressing the accelerator down low as he charged toward the sandbag barriers. With a series of thunderous impacts, the heavy truck surged into a cloud of dust, ascending onto the highway. Inside the vehicle, Wang Kursin pressed her hand against her pale chest, shaken by the violent jolt as Xiao Kai barreled through 3 defensive barricades, nearly causing the truck to topple over. Fortunately, the tumultuous shaking did not last long. Once they hit the highway, Xiao Kai accelerated to over 100 miles per hour, plowing through any zombies that obstructed their path, swiftly distancing themselves from the horde pursuing them. In the initial kilometers, the proximity to the city meant the road was littered with wrecked vehicles and numerous zombies. However, as they ventured further into the mountains, the number of cars diminished significantly, and the presence of zombies dwindled considerably. Where did you find that gun? Wang Kursin finally relaxed and inquired about the firearm Xiao Kai had been reluctant to part with, especially after the surroundings became relatively devoid of zombies. I picked it up at the highway entrance. I intended to gather a few more, but time was of the essence, Xiao Kai replied, stroking the assault rifle slung across his shoulder with a proud grin. Although he was not well versed in firearms, he recognized that the weapon was a military-grade assault rifle with a 30-round magazine. Even if he lacked proficiency, merely carrying it exuded an intimidating presence. While the rifle may not have been as effective against zombies as a machete, its psychological deterrent was exponentially more potent. It was not an exaggeration to say that a single person wielding a gun posed a far greater threat than a dozen armed with knives. Throughout their journey, Xiao Kai often caressed the rifle, yearning to fire a few rounds at the zombies. If only he were not concerned that the gunshots would attract a swarm of the undead. As dusk approached, Xiao Kai found a service area to stop, anticipating a fierce battle due to the constant flow of traffic on the highway, which would surely attract a multitude of zombies. To his surprise, upon entering the service area, he discovered not only a scarcity of zombies, but also very few vehicles. Aside from a handful of workers turned undead, only a few semi-trucks were parked there. Observing the somewhat desolate service area, Xiao Kai finally grasped, thanks to Wang Kursin's explanation, why there were so few zombies present. It turned out that soon after the virus outbreak began, the government mandated home quarantines, leading to city lockdowns that prohibited the movement of people and vehicles. Consequently, the highway entrances were closed, resulting in a significant reduction of traffic. Most of those stranded on the highway congregated near the exits, leaving the service area nearly empty. During the outbreak, individuals trapped on the highway were desperate to return home to their families or seek medical assistance at hospitals, employing various means to escape the highway. Thus, paradoxically, the highway became one of the least populated areas for zombies. However, this was merely a temporary respite. As time passed and zombies roamed freely, they would inevitably swarm the highway in greater numbers. For Xiao Kai, dealing with a few dozen zombies was as effortless as crushing ants beneath his feet, conveniently allowing him to collect several zombie cores in the process. Currently, the two individuals are less than 200 kilometers away from Guangyang City. If all goes well, they should arrive near Guangyang Medical University before noon tomorrow. For safety reasons, they refrained from venturing into the service area, merely taking turns to visit the restroom to attend to personal matters before returning to the truck. At this moment, the advantages of the heavy-duty truck became evident. Behind the driver's seat lies a bunk bed. While the space is limited, it is sufficiently comfortable for the two to enjoy a restful slumber.